Chapter 309. There was a small commotion among the players as they whispered to each other. I haven't seen any other storyline characters that are over LV60. It's still extremely lethal. The danger level hasn't changed, but was he over LV60 before? It doesn't feel like it. According to his story, Black Phantom was not strong at the beginning, but he suddenly grew and became the mastermind behind the scenes, destroying the Germinal organization. This is the uniqueness of the storyline main character. Black Phantom's combat power is definitely boss level. I just don't know where his combat power ranks in Blue Star. The impression that Han Xiao left on the players was that he was very strong, but his actual combat power had always been a mystery. When the players saw Han Xiao's battle videos as they grew, they would always be curious. Now that they were at max level, they could not see his specific attributes, and Han Xiao was about to show his combat power against a professional player. The gap between him and the players could clearly be seen. Everyone's curiosity was drawn out like a glutton, and their hearts were itching. It shouldn't be hard to last 30 seconds. Most of the players, including the selection participants, had the same thought. Although Han Xiao's level was unknown, according to the previous battle videos and his identity as a version 0 character, they came to a conclusion. Han Xiao was very strong, but not too strong. The gap between him and the players would definitely be much smaller than before. They were players, after all, and leveled up very quickly. The first player to be selected for the test was called Fallen Leaf, and he stepped forward. The surrounding players immediately dispersed and cleared out a space. Using force in the main city would normally lower the relationship between factions, but since Han Xiao had chosen this place, it would definitely not be a problem. Pairs of eyes stared at the field, holding their breaths as they waited. It's starting, Han Xiao reminded. Fallen Leaf immediately got into a battle stance and waited. 4 sonic spheres were shot out instantly, flying in a crisscrossing pattern, dazzling the eyes. The configuration was a double penetrator, a shock, and a probe. The probe amplified the area, the shock controlled Fallen Leaf, and the double penetrator released a sonic wave at the same time. An ear-piercing explosion sounded. Fallen Leaf's HP dropped by a lot in an instant, and he was stunned and rooted to the ground. Bang bang bang! Suddenly, 6 small booby-trap turrets appeared in the empty space around them. They opened fire, and the shells fell to the ground with a crackling sound. The firing speed was extremely fast, and the rain of bullets hit them. They flew backward against the fallen leaves and fell to the ground, where they were pressed down by the endless barrage of bullets. Fallen Leaf's body flickered with the light of energy. He used several skills, but the rain of bullets made it impossible for him to stand up. The sonic sphere was also attacking him from the side. All kinds of debuffs such as stun, heavy injuries, and so on appeared on his screen. He couldn't move. His HP slid to the brink of death in the blink of an eye. His storm-like attacks suddenly stopped as if they had never happened. The scene suddenly became so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. You didn't pass the test, Han Xiao said calmly. Fallen Leaf was stunned. Before he could regain his senses, everything was over. Everyone's jaws dropped in shock. Only 5 seconds had passed. A max-level pro player had actually been unable to fight back and had almost been insta-killed. He couldn't use any flashy moves. He was completely hung up and beaten. His combat power was completely suppressed. What shocked the players the most was that Han Xiao had maintained the same posture from the beginning to the end. He had not moved at all. Is the mechanic class so strong? Are we really playing the same class? He hasn't moved at all. How can he control these weapons? His combat power is too out of the ordinary in version 0. Is it because Blue Star can't restrict him anymore, so he wants to go to the stars? Previous recordings show that Black Phantom still has many combat skills. He hasn't used his full strength yet. His damage is ridiculously high. If we were to fight this boss, I don't know if a 50-man team would be enough to kill him. The same question appeared in the players' minds for the second time, but their mentality was completely different. What is Black Phantom's level? Since the start of the open beta, the players had come into contact with Han Xiao when they were still newbies. They thought that after leveling up so many times, the gap between them and Black Phantom would have narrowed. However, in the end, they realized that Mr. Han was still Mr. Han. Turning around and seeing the stunned expressions of the players, Han Xiao knew that he had achieved the effect he wanted. He had refreshed the players' impression of him so that they would not become arrogant and think that he could not wield a sword. Although the players were at the max level, their talents, attributes, and skills were too rare. Simply put, they did not have the bonus of the template. Han Technician was currently at level 70. He was stuck at the requirements of the class change and had not chosen a subclass. However, he had crossed the level 60 threshold, which was equivalent to the difference of one version. With the addition of the boss template, his talents, skills, energy, and mechanical power were 3 to 4 times stronger. His damage was unbelievable in the eyes of the players. The average HP of a level 60 player was more than 3,000, and their resistance was average. They were too weak for him. Furthermore, Han Zhao's sonic sphere had also been strengthened to purple grade. Its attack was very high. The sonic sphere itself was a very rare equipment in version 0. It had an independent tactical system, high damage, and strong control. The faces of the professional players froze. Li Gu opened his mouth. He thought that it would take a lot of time, but he realized that he was wrong. Black Phantom's speed of eliminating people was as fast as loneliness. The participants of the selection were no longer relaxed. They were on high alert, and when they heard Han Xiao pick the next person, they all became nervous. The test continued. These players were very cautious. They moved around the battle and did not dare to fight head-on. Once Han Zhao's attacks landed on them, no one could last more than 10 seconds. They all played dirty, hoping to drag out the 30 seconds. More and more people were watching, and some people were posting live videos on the forums. The players were used to seeing the outstanding performances of the players. The professional players who were in high spirits and popular a few days ago were now being pressed to the ground. The players were shocked. Then, they felt a sense of novelty. When had they ever seen professional players line up to be tortured? It was very exciting to see professional players being humiliated in various ways. More and more people were paying attention, and they were watching with great interest. Han Zhao's strength was also seen by the majority of the players. Various posts created heated discussions about Han Zhao's strength. The happiest ones were the mechanic players. Originally, the performance of the mechanic class in the Pro League was very bad, and they were in a bad mood. However, Han Xiao had brought a new dawn to the mechanic class. We are so strong when we grow up. You are the lighthouse that illuminates the road ahead. Han Xiao created a hot topic, and the players found entertainment from it. The serious selection was not serious anymore. However, only famous people could enjoy such treatment. The creativity of the masses was endless, and the players' imagination had no limit. They came up with all kinds of funny headlines. Black Phantom, last 30 seconds if you are a man. Shocking. Professional players can't last 30 seconds after staying up all night. How to last 30 seconds, the professional players have their own ways. When it came to creating trouble, the players were the professionals. 30 seconds became a joke, and seconds was spoofed into a unit to quantify a pro player's strength. There were only a few players who passed the test, and they were praised to the heavens as the legendary 30 seconds warrior. Han Xiao only stopped the selection at night and went back to rest. After he left, the players who had been watching the show for a long time gradually dispersed. The time limit of the mission was 5 days, and today was only the first day. The rest of the players had a lot on their minds and went back to think of strategies. Han Xiao went back to his room and was about to open the door when he suddenly stopped. He remembered something and went to the room of Mad Blade and the others. He pushed the door open and entered. Mad Blade and the others were chatting in the room. When they saw Han Xiao come in, they immediately stood up with curiosity. Normally, Black Phantom would not come to them for no reason. He would only come when there was a mission or reward. Thinking about the incident in the morning, the four of them had a vague guess. Anticipation appeared on their faces. As Black Phantom's followers, they had always enjoyed special treatment. Could it be that this time, Han Xiao laughed and said, "You are all my friends. I am about to leave this planet and go to a bigger world. I will give you a chance to choose. Are you willing to go with me? Look at this treatment." The others could only know that he was about to go to space from the mission introduction, but Han Xiao told them personally without hiding anything. They even had the right to skip the test. How humanistic and caring. Chapter 310. Mad Blade and Hao Tian had both accepted the selection mission, but they did not have the confidence to last for 30 seconds. Hao Tian, who was beside them, also heaved a sigh of relief. Since this was an opportunity that was presented to them, they naturally would not reject it. Pork Bun and Beating Dog were the most surprised. He saw the potential of Interstellar. If they could be part of the first batch of people to enter Interstellar, they would not lack material for future programs. Not to mention, the people following Han Xiao would definitely be professional experts, and he could invite them on his program to increase his popularity. However, when he saw the contestants being trampled by Han Xiao, Pork Bun felt a chill in his heart. He felt that there was no hope for him, but a pleasant surprise came unexpectedly. At this time, Pork Bun was so excited that he wanted to jump up and smash a hole in the ceiling. However, when he thought about the compensation fee, he controlled himself. In Han Xiao's eyes, Pork Bun was just a reporter. He did not even expect to use him as cannon fodder. However, Pork Bun's role was irreplaceable. Pork Bun's program was a channel for the players to understand him and increase his exposure. The importance of the media did not need to be emphasized. As long as Pork Bun had a good sense of the market, the program content for a long time in the future would definitely be about Han Xiao leading a group of experts on an adventure in Interstellar. This way, even if he left Blue Star, he would still be able to deepen the player's impression of him. Due to the curiosity of Interstellar and the popularity of the professional experts, more people would watch the Adventure Diaries series. This would increase the influence of Pork Bun's program to another level. At the same time, Han Technician's presence would be increased. He would subtly take root in the hearts of the players. He placed great importance on this arrangement. After all, there was a huge market for feelings. "Why do you want to go to Interstellar?" Maple Moon asked curiously. She was a player who liked to get to the bottom of things and enjoy the story. Han Zhao's eyes flashed. He glanced at Pork Bun and purposely used vague word. "This planet will welcome a catastrophe. Only the infinite Interstellar will have a solution to this disaster." Catastrophe? The four of them were stunned. While Maple Moon was questioning him, Pork Bun turned on the recording. He suddenly had a feeling that Han Zhao's words were a trap. A few days later. Rumble. Amidst the flames and explosions, the last participant, Second Prince, was struggling to hold on. 13, 14. The onlookers were counting excitedly. "Good luck, Guapi. You must join the 32nd Club." Sun Eggplant was gloating. There was a small group of people standing beside him. These people had all passed the test. Han Xiao had secretly held back. The players he wanted were basically all chosen. They were all pro-gods and players who had good results in the Division League. The surrounding players could only feel envious. They comforted themselves by telling themselves that the difficulty of the selection was too high, so only the gods could pass. This group of players was also jokingly called the 32nd Club. "I feel sorry for the Almighty for a second. I'm too strong, but I'm too weak. During the few days of the test, Han Xiao did not change his combat mode. He stood still and used sonic balls and a large number of cannons to suppress his opponent. This gave the participants confidence. They felt that this was like clearing a dungeon. They found patterns from other people's failures and gradually figured out the attack mode of Han Xiao's combat system. The further they went, the greater the advantage they had. However, one person could defeat 10 people. Even if the players had experience, their combat power was absolutely suppressed. They could only last from a few seconds to a dozen seconds. Second Prince, this person is passable. Han Xiao quietly slowed down his attack rhythm. There's a flaw. Second Prince's eyes flashed. He had an idea. He rolled 18 times on the ground and rolled out of the attack range. The rain of bullets enveloped him. He did not have time to get up. He steeled his heart and rolled around the field like a rubber ball. He could not stop. 29, 30. He held on. He actually used a godly skill, repeated lazy donkey roll. The spectating players laughed. Second Prince got up with a face full of dust. Sun Eggplant gave him a thumbs up and said, "I've opened my eyes. You've created a combat style. You deserve to be called the ancestor of the rolling ground style." King Admiral thought about it. It feels quite practical. Li Gu, do you want to learn it too? Li Gu was expressionless. Embarrassing. Get lost, all of you. Second Prince roared. This group of almighties was each other's opponent, but they were also old acquaintances. They gathered together and made fun of each other. Han Xiao had basically gotten all the members that he wanted. The 4 big clubs and the top 8 teams were all pulled in. The top 8 of the individual competition were basically brought in as well. After eliminating some random players, he counted the number of people. There were more than 50 people, and he just had to pay for the additional seat. Thanks to the Pro League, it was easy for Han Xiao to choose his target. He packed all the top players in the Blue Star division and brought them in. To him, the players were not only cannon fodder but also the middleman for the flow of resources. There were countless plots and missions in the galaxy. The players did missions to earn rewards, and Han Xiao used methods such as selling items and teaching skills to encourage the players to spend money here. Then, a portion of the rewards that the players earned would flow into his pocket. It was like raising a bunch of cheap employees to help him increase his profit. They were like a swarm of hard-working bees, collecting the resources of other NPCs for him. This was the right way to make use of the player's advantage. However, the galaxy was like a colorful world. In order to not let the players get lost and gather by his side, a little trick was needed. Han Technician had organized so many activities, and he had already made the impression that Han Xiao was one of them in the hearts of the Blue Star players. Plus, the attraction of the players to each other was attractive, so there would not be any problems in the short term. They would not choose to leave him just because they found a better opportunity. However, Han Xiao was used to planning ahead. Not only did he think about this problem, but he also came up with a solution. However, he had to wait until he officially entered the galaxy and encountered an opportunity before he could implement it. This idea was not a sudden idea but a key part of the overall plan. The principle behind it was a little dirty: all of them are gods. This lineup is too luxurious. Why does it seem like there are fewer people? Some observant fans suddenly realized that Hao Tian and Mad Blade did not come to participate in the test. All the players are here. How could they let go of this opportunity? Plus, Long Sky's people are also participating. The professional gods also realized this. Li Gu frowned. Where did those 2 go? Where's Hao Tian? Sleepy Winter was helpless. I asked. Hao Tian and Mad Blade originally had the qualifications to follow. Everyone was stunned for a moment before they suddenly realized. Right? Didn't Hao Tian and Mad Blade trigger Black Phantom's hidden storyline? Why did they have this kind of benefit? This group of pro players suddenly felt that it was unfair. Oh, they were being abused here, while those two guys were being treated with the back door. They were sitting on the fishing boat with their legs crossed, watching the others struggle. That's not fair. This group of gods was so angry that they were envious. They also wanted this kind of treatment. The last position, mission type. Challenge type prize pool mission. The players stopped and looked at each other. What a sudden prize pool mission. Where did it come from? Black Phantom didn't say anything. Did he release this mission? Challenge type prize pool. What does that mean? To accept the mission, you need to invest 1000 EXP. Give it a try. Many people were curious and accepted the mission immediately. They were shocked to find that the name of the mission was grayed out. Mission Introduction. One day in the future, a calamity will sweep across Blue Star. Sanctuary 3 will be the last safe position. Protect the weak light in the darkness. Only then will there be hope to survive the calamity. Requirements: protect Sanctuary 3. The damage and damage rate cannot be higher than 50%. Mission current status: frozen start time, unknown. Chapter 3:11. Han Shao could give out all kinds of missions. Challenge missions were usually more difficult and were usually used for large-scale missions. Every player's action would affect the final result of the mission. All the players were making a small contribution to the mission, so they needed to work together and help each other in order to complete the mission. He had seen challenge missions that could affect the version change before. Millions of players were fighting for the same goal, and every player's action would produce single-digit contribution points. The mission required tens of millions of contribution points to complete, and once it was successful, there would be a critical turning point in the storyline. The Last Stand was a means by which Han Shao wanted the Blue Star players to continue paying attention to Sanctuary 3 after he left. He hinted in the mission introduction that there would be a catastrophe in the future, but he did not say it clearly. However, the meaning revealed was enough to make the players' imagination run wild and make them speculate about the future storyline. Han Shao did not say anything himself. He wanted the players to think that the news was revealed through the mission and was authoritative. The little trick when he gave out the test mission was to warm up the audience. Freezing the mission was a special way to make the mission temporarily not start. When the catastrophe was confirmed, Han Shao would activate the mission remotely. This was like bait, constantly whetting the players' curiosity and revealing clues about the future, making them want to know the truth. The prerequisite for giving out missions was that the two parties were not too far away from each other. This was a hidden condition that Han Shao had tested many times. After leaving the planet, it was impossible for him to continue giving out missions to the Blue Star players, but it was not a problem for him to remotely give out missions. I still have a few days left in the sanctuary, enough for me to go around the entire sanctuary and let these hundreds of thousands of players accept the mission, Han Shao thought to himself. This way, he could ensure that these hundreds of thousands of players would remember Sanctuary 3 and solidify their image as a main city. At the start of version 0, these players could protect the sanctuary and survive the most dangerous period. The past few days had been filled with one wave after another for the players. Originally, the Germinal Organization storyline had been over for a long time, and Han Shao had been very low-key. The players started to believe the judgment of Galaxy Times, thinking that this main character of the storyline had lost his role and had become a purely functional NPC. However, Black Phantom had been quiet for more than half a year, and recently, he had become active again, and his actions were very shocking. He actually wanted to select players to go to the galaxy with him. That was not all. Black Phantom had also left a prize pool mission that had not been activated yet. The brief description of the mission seemed to have revealed that there would be a huge catastrophe that would sweep across Blue Star in the future. This outdated NPC had returned to the heart of the storm and caused a new wave of commotion. Many of the old players felt a sense of familiarity from the bottom of their hearts. They remembered that Black Phantom had been leading the trend since the start of the open beta. When this scene appeared again, it actually felt a sense of familiarity. On the forums, countless players were discussing the catastrophe that Blue Star was about to face. Alien invasion? The Six Nations started another war and completely destroyed the planet's environment? Or a natural disaster? I think this could be a new round of the main storyline. Look, the other planets are in full swing right now. Only our Blue Star is so idle. It's time for a new storm to appear. As the saying goes, when the world is united for a long time, it must part, and when separated, it must unite. Could it be that the romance of the Six Kingdoms is about to begin? The discussion was lively, and some players suddenly had the idea to link the two recent events of Han Shao together. Black Phantom is in a hurry to leave the planet. Could it be related to this catastrophe? He wants to escape from it. Impossible. I remember there was an episode of Vegetable Bag Hits Himself, where Black Phantom gave a motivational speech, saying that he wanted to protect life. Isn't he very noble? If that's the case, then there must be no hope. That's why Black Phantom gave up on his home and decided to escape. How big will the scale of the catastrophe be? The following main storyline won't be so fierce, right? Not necessarily. Maybe Black Phantom is just a coward. Didn't you see that he even brought helpers with him to escape? Are you kidding? He's the main character of the storyline. The Germinal organization was destroyed by him. Why would he run? You can't say that. A large part of his deeds in the Germinal organization were behind the scenes. There's a historical reason why he and the Germinal organization are enemies. Both sides are at loggerheads, so he has to fight with the Germinal organization. But it's different when it comes to a catastrophe. He can choose to avoid it. I thought he wouldn't have any more scenes after defeating the Germinal organization. There would not be only one opinion on a topic. Some people supported Han Shao, and some people maliciously speculated. Han Shao naturally did not care. It was a good thing to have opposing opinions. Conflict could attract more attention. On the other hand, if everyone was singing his praises, it would be easy to get sick of it. Pork Bun could not help it. He did not want to see the players belittle Han Zhao's reason for leaving. This was selfish. He had already decided to make a series of future galactic adventure shows. If the audience had the mentality that they were escapees, it would negatively affect the show's appeal. On the contrary, if Han Zhao's reason for going to space was noble, then their adventure would affect the heartstrings of the Blue Star audience. Coincidentally, Pork Bun had such material in his hands. Therefore, in the new episode, Pork Bun released Han Zhao's private speech to the four of them that night. This speech could show that Han Zhao's reason for leaving was to go to space to find a solution to solve the disaster. This instantly raised Han Zhao's image. At the end of the show, Pork Bun released a trailer. Looking up at the mysterious starry sky, yearning for it. I will follow Black Phantom to the vast starry sky. For this, I will make a new series of shows to record every bit of the galactic adventure and show the stars of the universe in front of you. Please look forward to it. Because the topic was very popular, Pork Bun's show was widely spread. The players suddenly realized that Han Shao had gone to space to solve the disaster. They were immediately filled with respect. Of course, there were also a small number of people who were skeptical. No matter what their attitude was, they were all paying attention to this incident. They were very curious about how Han Shao would go to space and stand side by side with the sun. They were also looking forward to Pork Bun's future shows. This series of news was only circulated among the players, and some local forces were still in the dark. Snow covered the sky and the north wind howled. This was a continuous snowy mountain range located in Raylan. There were many wild beasts in the mountains, and there was no trace of humans. There was not a single city within dozens of miles, and from time to time, loud and low roars of wild beasts could be heard echoing in the mountains. One of Raylan's top-secret research facilities was hidden in the mountains. Inside the research facility, Kurlad's spaceship was suspended in the air. Countless devices were intertwined around the spaceship, detecting various parameters of the spaceship and displaying them on a big screen. Countless researchers were coming and going, adjusting the devices. After getting the spaceship for more than 10 days, Raylan had secretly organized people to study it. These researchers were the top talents in the military and intelligence agencies. Most of them were pure researchers, and most of them were normal people. There were also mechanic superhumans. So many top talents were working together, but the progress was very slow. The spaceship's technology was much more advanced than Blue Star's. Furthermore, Ghidorah's technology contained magic, and many of its functions could be implemented with magic runes. This was completely different from Blue Star's technology. Chapter 312. The person in charge of the research walked over with a few high-ranking military officials wearing Raylan uniforms. One of them seemed to be the leader and asked, "Is there any progress?" The person in charge said helplessly, "There's almost no progress. The alien spaceship's technology is too high-end, and it's difficult for us to decipher it. Many of the parameters read by the instruments are constantly changing. It's completely illogical. Then copy some small parts. I only want the real thing. Sorry, the structure of many parts is too strange. We don't even know what some parts are used for. Many parts are covered with patterns. We copied them, but nothing happened. Furthermore, the spaceship can't be activated. You give me such an answer with a huge amount of funding every year?" The high-ranking old man's eyes were sharp. The person in charge wiped his sweat. "We still have some discoveries. Please follow me." The few of them came in front of a transparent container with a pool of black liquid inside. The person in charge said, "This seems to be the spaceship's energy engine oil. It's very dense and very viscous. Under the microscope, the oil molecules show signs of microorganisms. It reacts automatically to produce energy. The specific process is that the molecules divide and multiply, but they always maintain their original size. The energy will dissipate and dissipate. The process is completely automatic, which means that it produces energy out of thin air. It's very unbelievable. We think that this is an alien energy engine oil that can be recycled. If self-multiplication can continue indefinitely, in theory, it can produce unlimited energy." In the transparent container, the black liquid moved slowly. The high-ranking old man frowned. "How can it move by itself? Is it alive?" "This should be the reason for its multiplication. It has the characteristics of microorganisms, but it doesn't have a nervous system, so it doesn't have a consciousness. It only has some reactions. This pool of oil is like a colony of bacteria. Because it was alien technology, the researchers could accept all kinds of abnormalities." The person in charge added, "We have tested it. It has no radiation at all, and there are no toxins. We found a death row prisoner to test it. He used his body to come in contact with the oil. After the test, there were no abnormalities." The high-ranking old man nodded, and the few of them walked to the side. One of them said in a low voice, "The progress is still too slow. Our research time is limited. We can't keep hiding from the Ghidorah civilization. It's best if we can derive the real thing as soon as possible. But this is a technical bottleneck. It's not that easy to break through." The person in charge hesitated. "Unless there's someone who knows the industry to help." The high-ranking old man's eyes flashed. They looked at each other and thought of the same person. "That missing Ghidorah man. He definitely knows about these technologies. If we can find him, not only will we be able to answer to the Ghidorah civilization, but we can also use the excuse of helping him repair his spaceship." This way we will be able to obtain a portion of his technology. The elder looked at the higher-ups of the intelligence agency and asked, "How's the negotiation with the dark net going? When will Han Shao hand him over?" The intelligence officer said coldly, "He hasn't responded. The dark net has been evading him. He's courting death." The elder snorted angrily. "This concerns the future of the entire planet. He has crossed the line. A non-governmental organization actually dares to cover up for him? You're courting death. Should we send someone to take action?" "Humph, the southern continent is the territory of Star Dragon and Hesla. He thinks that we don't want to leak the information. He underestimated us," the elder said in a low voice. "The higher-ups have said that the missing investigator must be brought back. For this, they will not hesitate to contact the other countries to pressure the dark net." Originally, Raylan had planned to use violence. However, after considering the safety of the God Aura investigator and Han Zhao's personal combat power, this method was not feasible. The only way was for the dark net to hand over the investigator voluntarily. Therefore, they had to rope in the other countries to pressure the dark net. Although Raylan did not want the other countries to know that they had spaceships, compared to the overall situation of the planet, this concern was nothing. Of course, the condition for cooperation was that the other countries would also participate in the spaceship research. After all, they had not made any progress. Perhaps they would be able to maximize the benefits by working together. However, the prerequisite was that they had to promise to share the research results with each other. This was also an alternative compromise to Han Zhao's personal combat power. Therefore, Raylan's resentment toward him was understandable. Originally, Raylan was happy and could have shipped the person and the spaceship back to their country. However, who knew that old Han would interfere and take away their love? Raylan felt like a forest had grown over his head. The green color was exactly the same as his mood. The higher-ups have already contacted the leaders of the other countries. If the dark net does not value Raylan, then let's see if they can withstand the pressure from the 6 nations. And Han Shao, he thinks that he is the strongest person on the planet and that no one can do anything to him. He thinks that he can do whatever he wants with his past contributions. I hope this lesson will make him understand that there are some benefits that he is not qualified to covet. The elder sneered. The players in the sanctuary had accepted the prize pool mission, The Last Stand, which was suspected to be a future main storyline. Many players had come because of its fame. The prize pool had accumulated to an astronomical figure, which satisfied the number of people Han Shao needed. As more and more people discussed this matter, Han Zhao's mysterious aura became thicker. Counting the days, the arrival of the tour group was approaching. Beep, beep, the interstellar communicator rang. It was a new message from the Short-Horn tour group. They would arrive at Blue Star's orbit the next day. They reminded the passengers to prepare their luggage, and the boarding location would be determined by the communicator. Han Shao could choose anywhere he wanted. It's finally here. Han Shao suddenly stood up. A wave of excitement hit his heart. The memories of his previous life in the galaxy were like boiling water, bubbling up one after another. The vast universe, the many civilizations, the powerful main characters, the countless races, the battleships shuttling through the galaxy, the turmoil and danger time after time, the memories came alive again. The galaxy was the future. Entering it early was to lay the foundation for the future. Only in the galaxy could one achieve higher growth. The stage for future version events would also be the galaxy. Han Shao calmed himself down and thought to himself, the preparations are complete. Dozens of teammates have been selected, and the equipment and resources have been packed. I won't have to worry about lacking experience for a long time. All the miscellaneous matters have been settled. His accumulation in Blue Star was the foundation for his development in the galaxy. Dawn broke. The roaring sound of the engine broke the silence in the sanctuary. A fleet of heavy trucks roared past the main road and headed toward the gate. The players and passers-by on the street all looked over. The logo on the vehicles represented that they were the troops directly under the authority of the sanctuary. The only one who could be mobilized was the person in charge, Han Xiao. The players realized something and followed behind the fleet. Chapter 3:13. When the fleet stopped, there was already a sea of players watching from afar. They watched as the fleet unloaded boxes of supplies on the empty ground, piling them up like a small mountain. A group of chosen pro players waited on the side in twos and threes. Han Xiao, who attracted the most attention, was standing alone on the side, looking up at the sky as if he was waiting for something. Many players turned on the video function excitedly. So, he's leaving today. Everyone was curious about how Han Xiao was going to leave Blue Star. The players had been waiting for this for a long time. They all looked up at the sky with curiosity. It was dawn. The sun was slowly rising from the horizon. The sky was getting brighter and brighter, and the darkness was gradually dispelled. At this time, a black shadow the size of an ant suddenly appeared in the sky above the crowd. Only when they focused their eyes could they see that it was the outline of a spaceship that was slowly descending. Look, a spaceship! At first, the crowd was still discussing in amazement. However, as the shadow of the spaceship grew larger and larger in everyone's sight, the voices of discussion gradually died down. The noisy scene suddenly became dead silent. Tens of thousands of people opened their mouths wide. They were all speechless by the scene in front of them. When the spaceship was still high in the sky, its outline was only the size of a green bean. When it was a few hundred meters above the crowd, they realized that this spaceship was terrifyingly huge. Its mountain-sized shadow covered the sky silently above everyone's head, covering the sun and the sky. Oh my God! How big is this spaceship? Looking up from the ground, their vision was completely blocked by the spaceship. It was pitch black, and they could not see the end of it. Only the outline of the spaceship could be seen. The moment Short-Horn Star landed, a poem appeared in everyone's mind. Dark clouds loomed over the city, threatening to destroy it. Short-Horn Star, the main ship of the tour group, was a large travel spaceship with its own ecosystem. It could even be used as a mobile space station for long-distance travel in the universe. It was surrounded by probe devices and patrol defense cannons, as well as high-energy convergent shields. Just this large main ship alone could traverse the entire Blue Star. The crowd was so shocked, not to mention the chosen pro players. They all gasped. In their eyes, Han Xiao was only a Blue Star character. It was unbelievable that he could summon such a large spaceship. However, Han Xiao had displayed his remarkable abilities, and this group of teammates had also gained a lot of confidence. This scene was too impactful. It was filled with a sci-fi aesthetic. The mechanical monster and the environment had reached a perfect harmony. It had the qualifications to become a desktop wallpaper. The players fought to be the first to take photos and videos. A box-shaped floating cabin was detached from Short-Horn Star. 4 jets were spitting out blue exhaust flames. It slowly landed in front of Han Xiao, kicking up a cloud of dust. This was an airdrop cabin designed to receive passengers on the ground. It was full of mechanical style and had a precise structure. It was all metal and pure mechanical technology. The cabin door opened, and the foldable gangway extended in front of Han Xiao. "Let's get on the boat. I can't wait to have a drink." Kurlad couldn't wait to get on the boat, completely forgetting that he was no longer in charge of his savings. Han Xiao asked the players to be the coolies. They carried all the resource boxes up and then stepped into the airdrop pod. The pod door closed automatically, and the airdrop pod took off vertically, embedding itself in Short-Horn Star. Then, Short-Horn Star rose rapidly. Such a huge spaceship was flying silently, and there was no tail flame. It gave everyone a strong feeling of contrast. When the spaceship docked at the planet, It turned off its engine and only turned on its anti-gravity core to save fuel. Through the window, Han Xiao looked at the crowd that was slowly turning into ants and sighed in relief. I've finally taken this step after being in Blue Star for so long. The sky was high and the sea was wide. On the flat ground, countless players watched the spaceship disappear into the sky. The sun shone down again. Inside Sanctuary 3, Hela stood behind her sister. She put her hands on Aurora's shoulders. The two of them looked up at the short-horned star that was descending. Will he come back? Aurora asked curiously. Hela was silent for a while. She shook her head slowly. That's a wider world. Why would he come back when he's already out there? Sis, why don't we go with him? Hela rubbed Aurora's light blonde hair and didn't say anything. Sis, you're hurting me. Hela then realized that she had used too much strength. She immediately slowed down. The bear cub beside her roared at the sky a few times. It then laid on the ground and buried its head in its paws. It raised its butt and whimpered as if it was sad that its owner had left it. Aurora rubbed the soft fur of the bear. She was depressed. Will we see him again? She asked softly. We will meet again sooner or later. But you just said that he won't come back. Yeah. Hela didn't explain further. Aurora understood what Hela was trying to say. Her eyes lit up and she was excited again. He's gone. In Sanctuary 1, Bennett was video chatting with Huang Yu. He was listening to Huang Yu's report. I'll leave Sanctuary 3 to you from now on. Don't change Han Zhao's measures. Other than that, you can decide on everything else yourself. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Huang Yu was excited. After working as a laborer for so long, he finally got the chance. Don't thank me. It was Han Xiao who recommended you before he left. I understand. Huang Yu nodded heavily and remembered it in his heart. After ending the call, Bennett opened his secret account and clicked on the ultimatum that the Six Nations had sent a few days ago. Raylan had joined forces with other countries to pressure the dark net. Bennett suppressed this himself. He didn't want Han Xiao to be troubled by this before he left. But now, what was done was done. The way his old friend left was enough to shock the Six Nations. Even he was shocked. Bennett was very curious about how Raylan felt right now. There were too many witnesses to this incident, and it had a huge impact on the world. The video quickly spread on the internet. The people of Blue Star witnessed the scene of a mountain-sized spaceship landing on the planet. It was very shocking. Short-horned star was so huge that it didn't hide at all when it landed, which shocked the Six Nations. When the satellites discovered Short-horned star, the Six Nations panicked and were about to send out their air force to negotiate. However, Short-horned star had no intention of negotiating with the government of the planet. Before the Six Nations could do anything, it just left. Blue Star was visited by such a huge spaceship, and the Six Nations were very worried. They hurriedly tried to find out the details. When they found out the truth, that Short-horned star had only landed to pick up Han Xiao, the Six Nations' confusion instantly turned into shock. A mysterious giant spaceship that was countless years ahead of the Blue Star civilization level was actually here for Black Phantom? How did he do it? What other secrets was he hiding? Even if they knew that Black Phantom was very powerful, this was too shocking. It was beyond everyone's imagination. Chapter 314. As soon as Han Xiao left, Raylan could not do anything. Even they could not enter the galaxy, but Han Xiao did it so easily. The galaxy had always been hidden by a veil for the Six Nations. The communicator they got from God Aura was a watered-down version. It was restricted to only communicating with God Aura and could not use other functions. This was the suppression of the civilization level. The Six Nations could only compromise. Therefore, they did not know about the function of the Galactic Travel Agency and did not understand how Han Xiao did it. They even thought that there might be an unknown galactic organization behind Han Xiao. This guy had always been mysterious and kept them in the dark. As the ruling authority of Blue Star, they found out that one person had a backer that was stronger than the entire planet. This uneasiness and anger were indescribable. Raylan was the initiator of the pressure from the Six Nations. The pressure became meaningless, and they even revealed that they had a spaceship. They suffered a double loss and could not say anything. This difference in expectations was like students from the same village. The Six Nations wanted to beat Han Shao in an exam, but they found out that he had already been recommended to a famous school in a big city. They could not catch up and were extremely disappointed. Through the porthole of the airdrop cabin, the ground gradually shrank. Short-Horn Star rose into the sky, and the sky turned dark. Short-Horn Star's anti-gravity engine operated silently and entered the dark outer space. At this time, the airdrop cabin shook. The huge spaceship was breaking through the atmosphere and entering the universe. The Blue Star's full appearance slowly appeared. The deep blue ocean and the land that was dotted with greenery could be seen from a bird's-eye view. Han Shao saw that the entire Andrea continent was charred black. The war and nuclear explosion had caused the most damage to this continent. His experience on planet Aquamarine flashed through his mind. He had started from scratch, completed the primitive accumulation of capital, and rose on this planet. Now, he had finally stepped onto a higher stage. Although he did not care about some of his friends on this planet, he did not leave without nostalgia. Although it was cool to not drag things out, the feeling of leaving a city without any worries was not as good as leaving behind some ties. Bennett, Hella, and Aurora. Although they were not very close, they were all people with great potential. Purely from the perspective of benefits, Han Shao also hoped that Hella and her sister would have grown up the next time they met and could provide him with help. Looking at the planet that was gradually disappearing, he thought, "Wait for me to come back." Then, Han Shao decisively looked away. He no longer looked at the planet and turned to look at the tunnel that led inside the spaceship. Chi. The metal door that connected the box airdrop cabin to the spaceship split into 4 diamond-shaped pieces from the middle and then retracted into the wall. The tunnel opened and there was a square metal corridor in front of them. The indicator light next to the door turned from red to green, indicating that the passengers should board the ship through the tunnel. Kurlad urged, "Hurry up, I'm going to have a drink." "What's the rush? I have all your money." Han Shao waved his hand. Dozens of players stopped and looked at him curiously. They then carried the supply boxes and walked forward. Halfway through the tunnel, there was a mechanical arch with a screen next to it. This was a device used to detect the passenger's physical condition and body structure. It was convenient to identify the passenger's race and provide appropriate arrangements. Everyone walked past it one by one. The screen showed that everything was normal. Then, a transparent container rose from the floor. It was filled with simple translation devices that were free for the passengers to use. Han Shao asked everyone to put them on. Then, a synthetic female voice came out from the screen. "Welcome to the Short-Horn Star Travel Service. Your passenger number is SG-1853. You have reserved 50 seats. There are more than enough people. Please pay the fee with a few more people." Han Shao followed the instructions. He still had more than 700 anas in his account. Then, the voice said, "Amount confirmed. Class, normal class. Personal luggage storage function activated. Please store your luggage and continue forward." Then, a hole appeared in the wall. Inside was a running caterpillar that transported the luggage to the warehouse. After placing the supply boxes inside, everyone moved forward again. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnel. It was a large elevator. After everyone entered, the elevator started to move. It moved up and down and moved parallel to each other. Of course, the interstellar travel ship did not force the passengers to sit in their seats to complete the journey. Instead, it was more like a cruise ship. There were many entertainment and resting spaces on the spaceship. Different cabins had different resting spaces, and they were divided according to the environment that the species adapted to. For example, species that were adapted to oxygen and low gravity would be in the same hall, just like Han Shao. Species that lived in special environments also had their own places. For example, there were aquatic creatures, anaerobic creatures, and light-sensitive creatures. There were many situations. The elevator suddenly stopped. The door opened and a bustling scene greeted them. In front of them was a huge space. This was the hall of the normal class. It was very spacious, and there were all kinds of entertainment facilities. It was like a combination of a bar, a banquet hall, and a party venue. There were bars, resting areas, and private rooms. On one side of the hall was a huge window, and one could directly see the bright universe outside. The stars were like a long river. All kinds of species came and went. A creature that looked like a birdman with feathers was chatting with a lion in clothes. Beside them, there was a bearded dwarf and a creature with a beast head with long fangs drinking. The smells and sounds of different creatures mixed together to create a strange feeling. The players had an inexplicable feeling of uneasiness. This was the first time they had come into contact with another race. What race is that? His head is like a wooden club. Second Prince was amazed. Yours is quite similar too. Son Eggplant laughed. Don't always bully him. You are violating my rights, King Admiral said lazily. The veins on Second Prince's forehead bulged as he gave the two of them the middle finger. Rainy Kim stared at the window, admiring the starry sky like a silent beauty. Twinkle Fried Rice slowly moved to her side. He hesitated and wanted to talk to her, but his shoulder was pulled back by Hao Tian. Hao Tian dragged Sleepy Winter and Twinkle Fried Rice and said seriously, "We will act according to the situation later. Let's see if we can trigger some missions." Fried Rice, why do you look so bitter? The players were shocked, and they whispered among themselves. Han Shao, however, was not surprised. The universe was bizarre and variegated. He had seen too many races and was very experienced. Soon, a humanoid female steward in uniform walked forward. Her skin was light red, and she had a polite smile on her face. The female stewardess quickly scanned the crowd and walked in front of Kurlad. She smiled warmly and said, "Respected Godoran, your room is ready." In the Colton star cluster, Godora was a well-known race. They had a high status, and travel groups were like public transport spaceship. It was a cheaper way to travel, so it was rare to see a Godora. The steward treated Kurlad as the leader at first glance. As for Han Shao and the others, she ignored them. Kurlad was a little surprised. He glanced at Han Shao and nodded. "Okay, got it." The flight attendant gave Kurlad the room number and permission, then winked at him before leaving. She was obviously trying to seduce him. Godorans were very popular, so this female flight attendant of the Anwei race did not mind doing something with Kurlad. Some races could be mixed, and some had reproductive isolation. The races in the universe were very open. Kurlad was a pure-blooded, so he was not interested in females of other races. He turned around and gave the thing to Han Shao. Han Shao put it away casually. He was happy that Godora was the leader and the shield. Kurlad said, "We are on the ship. The deal is done. When can I contact the headquarters?" "Don't worry. The final stop is Ubarely Hub. You can go home by yourself. I won't stop you." "That's great." Kurlad rubbed his hands and said awkwardly, "I want to go for a drink. That's all. Don't drink too much." Han Shao transferred 10 annas to him and sighed to himself. Extorting the other party's savings and giving them pocket money, there were not many good people like him in this world. After getting the money, Kurlad ran to the bar happily. He was a hedonist, so he spent most of his money on drinks and energy drink. Han Shao brought everyone to the room. The players looked around curiously, and Bun Hit Dog recorded excitedly. From time to time, other races would look over, but they would look away. The universe human race was very common in the galaxy, and there were quite a number of such races in this economy class hall. When they reached the door, Han Xiao thought for a while, turned around and said, "You guys can do whatever you want. Ask around for information about the passengers." The players could not hold back their curiosity, so they quickly scattered. The players were his eyes and ears, so he did not need to ask around himself. Furthermore, the players might be able to accept missions from the passengers and earn anas. He could use some methods to exchange for items, so it was like the players were earning money for him. Chapter 3:15. After sending everyone away, Han Xiao walked into the room alone and let out a long sigh. He finally had the chance to be alone. The first step of entering the galaxy was complete. There were many possibilities in the galaxy, and there were many plans for his next move. He needed to decide on a route. Firstly, he was located in the Garten star system of the Colton star cluster. According to his strength, this area was dangerous but just right for him to develop. He was a LV-70 mechanic, grade C, and could be considered the backbone of the supers in the Colton star cluster. It could be seen that the universe was divided into many star fields, and the Colton star cluster belonged to the Shattered Star Ring star field. The Shattered Star Ring was located at the edge of the visible universe and was considered a remote place. Its name came from the structure of the star map. This star field was like a scattered broken star ring, and the various star clusters were part of this ring. The ring surrounded the center of the Shattered Star Ring, which was a very dangerous place. There was an extremely large group of unstable wormholes, and all kinds of garbage would be thrown in from time to time from various star fields, forming a garbage dump. Because of this, scavengers were very active in the Shattered Star Ring. There was a saying that was often used: "Where there are people, there will be trouble." There were many unorthodox jobs in the universe, such as space pirates, scavengers, mercenaries, colonists, and so on. The Shattered Star Ring did not have a strong ruling regime, only scattered star cluster and star system level civilizations. Therefore, there were many unsafe areas. The Shattered Star Ring was under the jurisdiction of West Sandlin in name, but this civilization only sent emissaries to the office and rarely interfered. West Sandlin was the official name of the Universal Civilization, Radiant Federation. The bigger the area, the more dangerous it would be. Han Xiao remembered many opportunities, but based on the current situation, it was best to stay in the Colton star cluster and develop first. It was currently version 1.0, and he did not know everything about the galactic storyline during this period. After all, logically speaking, the players should not have come into contact with the galaxy at this stage. However, some of the large-scale missions should not have changed. The first step is to obtain information. Ubarely Hub is a place where many organizations have offices. I can try to rely on one of them and obtain the initial information. Han Xiao thought to himself. As long as he got the information, he would be able to deduce some large-scale storyline quests that were suitable for him. His core goal was naturally to grow. He was not limited by the version and was always ahead of the players. He had to maintain this advantage. Danger was everywhere, and if he did not advance, he would fall behind. But now, Han Zhao's main class was stuck at the class advancement quest. He needed to find a subclass to level up to level 80 and obtain enough attribute points to break through the 400-point threshold. He was not a casual person. Leveling up required more and more EXP, so he had to find a valuable and rare subclass. That was why he chose to change his class. After the harvest from the Pro League, Han Zhao's EXP on his interface had reached 2,700,000,000. This would be his foundation for a very long time, so he didn't have to worry about running out of EXP in the short term. The accumulated resources and equipment were worth a few thousand to tens of thousands of anas. The exact value would depend on the needs of the trading party and the fluctuating value of the machinery. It was impossible to estimate before the trade. The other requirement for the class advancement was 5 mechanic class advancement knowledges. In the universe, there were many ways to obtain super knowledge. The higher level knowledge was also restricted, but the advancement knowledges were not difficult to obtain. Some financial groups and organizations were selling advancement knowledges, and one could buy them as long as one had the money. Earning money could solve this problem. As long as one had enough money, one could buy all the advancement knowledges. With money, one could really do whatever one wanted. In terms of earning money, Han Xiao was not bragging. He was not afraid at all. The players are equivalent to labor, and I can obtain anas indirectly through them. Furthermore, they are also my helpers. If I were to become mercenaries, they would do missions while I collect money from behind. But if I want to earn a lot of money, it's best to sell rare items, such as mining some rare minerals, or do some missions that have existed for a long time. The existence of the players was his advantage. If he used them well, he could get twice the result with half the effort. This was also the reason why he chose to bring the players along. Growth and leveling up were his core goals. Han Xiao had another goal, which was to get ahead of the storyline and try to solve the mutation disaster of Blue Star in version 2.0. Speaking of the mutation disaster, one had to mention the evil faction of the Colton star cluster, Dark Star. In version 2.0, many planets in the Shattered Star Ring were affected by the mutation disaster, and this organization was the cause. The novice planets in the other star fields experienced different storylines. Dark Star was a reactionary organization that originated from the Ghidorah civilization, and Han Xiao was very clear about the history of Dark Star. A large part of the origin of Dark Star came from the discrimination of Ghidorah's pure-blooded members. Most of the members of Dark Star were mixed-blood Ghidorahs, and due to the discrimination of their bloodlines, they developed extreme thoughts and constantly wanted to overthrow the Ghidoran regime. They believed that Ghidorah was a rotten system, and they were the new Ghidorah of the new era. Every civilization had their own ideology and traditions. Being advanced or backward was just based on different perspectives, and there was no absoluteness. Perhaps being tolerant was truly being advanced. Civilizations had their own specialties, respecting the traditions of other civilizations and species, tolerating each other during negotiations, but not completely accepting each other. This was the norm for civilizations in the universe. Of course, during the early stages of space exploration, there was no lack of civilizations with different ideologies, characteristics, and habits that could not be reconciled. For example, there was basically no possibility of communication between humans and species that ate humans. However, these extreme civilizations were either dead or injured, and as the super-civilizations spread order, these species had no choice but to accept each other's existence. Ghidorah originated from magic, and before they came into contact with the universe, the Ghidorah were all pureblood. Only after they started to mate with other intelligent species were mixed-blood Ghidorah born. Thus, the pure-blood theory started to spread, and traditions were valued. Those in power were all pureblood, and thus, the pure-blood and mixed-blood classes started to be separated. As Ghidorah grew, more and more mixed-bloods were born, and the bloodline talent of the Ghidorah was gradually diluted. Thus, more and more purebloods were valued, and the extreme purebloods did not even consider the mixed-bloods as the same race. The conflict became more and more intense, and in the end, Dark Star was born, going against Ghidorah in every aspect. If I want to solve the mutation disaster, I have to start with the Ghidorah civilization, Han Xiao thought to himself. The mutation virus had a very high latency, and in his previous life, it had only attracted attention when the mutation disaster actually happened. The only thing he could do now was to prepare for the worst. These two goals were the main focus of his current plan. He thought about the details of the plan, turned on his communicator, and browsed through the galactic channel to understand the current situation of the Colton star cluster. At this time, a notification came from the broadcast. Everyone, please return to your rooms. The spaceship is about to accelerate and enter the light warp path. There may be some turbulence, and if you feel dizzy, please do not panic. This is a normal reaction. Rapid footsteps could be heard outside the door, and all the passengers returned to their rooms. Kurlad and the players also returned. Black safety belts popped out from the wall. For such a low-level travel group, there was no need to hope for protective compartments. After buckling up, the room door was automatically locked, and a roar could be heard from within the spaceship. The metal walls and floor trembled non-stop. Immediately after, a pushing force pressed down on everyone and pressed them to their seat. This was the reaction force that had been weakened many times by various devices. Short Horn Star spewed out a blazing tail flame, and its speed kept increasing. Streaks of light suddenly appeared outside the dark window, as if they had entered a tunnel of light. Buzz! Just as the pushing force reached its peak, Short Horn Star suddenly flashed and turned into a beam of light. The engine was running at full power, and they entered the warp path. Under the effect of the internal stabilizing device, the reaction force was quickly reduced, and everyone's bodies relaxed. Next stop, Star Zone 5 of the Garten star system. Travel time is 3 days. Please enjoy the journey. For 3 consecutive days, Han Xiao remained low-key on the spaceship. The players, on the other hand, were very friendly. They talked to the passengers and helped them enthusiastically. This was the first time that this group of passengers had seen such friendly humans. After chatting with them, they could tell that the players had limited knowledge and were probably natives. Kurlad was drinking a dark blue wine at the bar. At this time, a mixed-blood human with pointy ears and thin cheeks walked up to him and threw an Aina's coin to show that the drink was on him. He smiled and said, "You got on the spaceship from Blue Star? That low-level planet only has a low-level civilization, and the people you brought on the spaceship are all natives? What does that have to do with you?" Kurlad glanced at him. "Hee, are you interested in doing business with me? My name is Cecily, and I'm in this business." This person was wearing gloves, and he quietly opened a gap to reveal the tattoo on the back of his hand. The tattoo was a bird wrapped around a chain. This was the symbol of a slave trader, and it could be considered as a scavenger business. Kurlad waved his hand impatiently and said, "F***ck off, I'm too lazy to talk to you." Public spaceships were a mix of good and bad people, and there were many gray organizations that were looking for fat sheep. Therefore, those who could afford it did not want to take the Galactic Travel Agency. Kurlad hated coming into contact with scavengers, as it ruined his mood. He was not even in the mood to drink his favorite dark blue star bubble. "Don't be in such a hurry to reject. I can see that the natives you brought are all supers. The market price for supers is pretty good. Why don't you consider it?" Cecily said patiently. At this time, Han Zhao's voice sounded behind the two of them. "I think you should leave." Chapter 316. Cecily blended into the crowd and started chatting with the others. He did not seem to be bothered by the failed deal. Slave trade. Han Xiao stared at Cecily's back and frowned. "Don't look at me because I lack money. I have integrity." Kurlad snorted and finished the drink in one gulp. He paused for a while before continuing. "There are hundreds of scavenger organizations in the Shattered Star Ring, and they use tattoos to identify themselves. Some scavengers are also involved in other gray businesses, such as robbery, kidnapping, extortion, and slave trading. That Cecily is the middleman of the slave trading industry, and he's responsible for finding targets. He belongs to the Boneless Bird Scavenger Organization, which is a group of bandits wanted by a few star system civilizations in Godora. Slave trade is to capture rare species and supers and sell them to customers who need them for viewing or beast fighting. Supers were very common in the galaxy, but they were far fewer than ordinary people. In the eyes of the galactic people, supers were like trained warriors or talented geniuses. Supers enjoyed a higher status, and some ordinary people also had the mentality of wanting to control supers. Thus, shows such as Supers Fighting emerged. It was just like watching a more advanced boxing match. The audience enjoyed watching supers fight to the death with each other, obtaining both visual and psychological enjoyment. Some official arenas hired supers with high salaries, while some underground arenas bought supers as slaves. Thus, the price of supers in the slave market had always been quite good. "You guys are being watched, so you better be careful," Kurlad said. "However, scavengers won't do things that cost more than the profit. It should be safe on the spaceship. I rejected him, so he won't pester me. I don't think he's interested in us natives." Han Shao pondered. The spaceship suddenly shook and exited hyperdrive. The floor-to-ceiling porthole on the side of the hall showed that Short-Horn Star was approaching a grayish-black planet. The surface of the planet was filled with endless gray ridges and mountains. There was no greenery at all, only some kind of barren rock. Streams of dark water gathered to form a silent river. This was Star Zone 5. Danger zones were everywhere, and this planet was one of them. The danger level on Ghidorah's star map was medium to high, which meant that there was more than a 40% chance that an investigator would die here. Blue Star's evaluation in the database was only low. The spaceship entered the atmosphere and hovered high in the sky. It released the airdrop cabin and landed on the ground to pick up new passengers. The public transport spaceship would pick up passengers along the route. Someone on this planet was calling for the Short-Horn Star travel group. On the other side, in the VIP passageway, the passenger who had just boarded the ship was wearing a tattered white hooded cloak. Hidden under the cloak was a tall and sturdy figure, carrying a huge backpack. His footsteps were very heavy, accompanied by the clanging sound of metal clashing. In front of the scanning door, this person took off his cloak and revealed his true appearance. He was actually a humanoid cyborg. A large part of his body had been mechanically modified. Pipes and wires were hidden in the gaps of the armor. All kinds of indicator lights were flashing. Of his four limbs, only his right arm was still a hand. Above the neck, there was no disguise. His appearance was cold, his eyes were sharp, and he exuded a cold aura that kept people away. This person's eyes were light green, as beautiful as emeralds. His skin was very white, and his cyborg body was full of scars from battle. After the scan, a voice came out from the broadcast. "Welcome to Short-Horn Star. You have booked the premium cabin. Passenger number is. Please enjoy your trip." The premium cabin hall was another place. There were not as many passengers as the standard cabin hall. At the same time, the environment was better, and it was quieter. This person had no intention of stopping. He passed through the hall and went straight back to his room. The passengers in the hall glanced at him and were surprised. "Is that the Green Knight?" "Yes, that's him. There are not many warriors left in the Sunil race. He's a high-level mercenary in the Mercenary Alliance. Very strong guy. I can't believe we're seeing him here. Didn't the Sunil race migrate?" Everyone whispered and subconsciously lowered their voices, as if they did not want to be heard by that person. They were very afraid. Of course, Han Shao did not know who had boarded the ship. The broadcast announced that the next stop was another star zone, and there would be a few stops on the way to Ubarely Hub. He was very patient and was not in a hurry. During this time, he collected information from the passengers and the galactic channel through the communicator. The communicator also functioned as a TV. There were many channels dedicated to broadcasting all kinds of entertainment programs. Han Shao found a lot of good stuff in one of Kurlad's folders called Investigators Work Information. After a few glances, Han Shao turned it off silently. His eyes were burning. Ghidorah people really know how to play. Kurlad drank every day and spent all his pocket money very quickly. He tried to ask Han Shao for money again, but to no avail. After that, he slept in his room every day, not realizing that he was kidnapped at all. Han Xiao could not help but sigh at how generous this god Aura was. Life in the spaceship was very simple and peaceful. He just wanted to reach his destination safely. However, a turn of events came unexpectedly. In a certain area in front of Short-Horn Star's route, a few scavenger spaceships floated quietly in space. They had a unique shape with traces of civilian modifications. This was the unique style of scavengers. On the sides of the spaceships, there was a boneless bird logo. On the deck inside the main ship, scavengers from different races were having a party. The leader of the boneless birds sat on the highest seat, drinking from a barrel while laughing loudly. The leader of the boneless birds was called Serpent Braid. He was almost 4 meters tall and had the blood of a rock giant. His muscles were bulging, and he had a layer of stone skin. He had a big beard, and his hair was tied into a braid that reached his waist. This was the origin of his nickname. Scavengers wandered in the gray area. They earned money to have fun, and parties were the most common activities they held when they had nothing to do. Ding! Ding! New message! The control panel of the main ship flashed, and a text message appeared. It was signed by Cecily. "Little ones, it's time to work." Serpent Braid threw the barrel away, and it shattered in a corner. He stood up, wiped the wine off his beard, and said with a ferocious expression, "The target this time can be sold for a lot of money." The hundreds of scavengers below howled in excitement. 1 against 3. Bomb 4 KS 5 twos. Can't afford it. Wait, where did the twos come from? On Short-Horn Star, a group of players squeezed into a room and played landlord out of boredom. After staying on the spaceship for a few days, there were no more missions to accept. Furthermore, fighting was prohibited on the spaceship, and many areas were not open to the public. This group of players could only find their own entertainment. They could not skip the journey, and this was often criticized. Some players went offline to rest, leaving 1/3 of them online. The login point and resurrection point could be bound to a transportation device, so there was no need to worry about getting lost. See 147 for details. Han Xiao sat at the side and looked at the time. They would arrive in a few days. Short-Horn Star had now arrived at the second star zone of the Garten star system, and it was bustling. Many planets in this zone had civilizations, and it was one of Ghidorah's key areas. It was relatively close and easy to manage. Spaceships stopped here to pick up people the most. As long as they arrived at the first star zone and entered the stable wormhole door, they would arrive at the destination. At this moment, there was an unusual jolt on the floor. Then, an ear-piercing alarm sounded from the broadcast. Han Zhao's expression changed slightly, and he stood up abruptly. Kurlad, who was sleeping in, also woke up instantly. The two of them hurriedly walked out of the room. The players behind them were confused, but they knew that something must have happened, so they followed the two of them. At this time, one side of the hall was in chaos. All the passengers walked out and looked out of the porthole in horror. Explosions of various colors were flashing outside, but because there was no sound in the vacuum environment, there was a great terror in the silence. Chapter 317. I'm the captain of Short-Horn Star. Dear passengers, we're currently under attack by scavengers. We're about to activate our engines at full power. As long as we enter the warp orbit, we'll be able to shake off the enemy. Don't worry, the enemy will not be able to break in. We have plenty of experience in dealing with attacks. This time, the voice coming out of the broadcast was no longer a mechanical voice but the calm, masculine voice of the captain, comforting the passengers. As a low-level travel group, Short-Horn Star was bound to be robbed by scavengers and space pirates. Short-Horn Star had been specially modified. Its shield was very tough, making it easier to escape. This is not good. Han Xiao gritted his teeth. He just wanted to reach his destination safely. Why was it so difficult? Space attacks were a problem that he could not solve with his current strength. He could only resign himself to fate. More than a dozen scavenger spaceships were circling and attacking. There were 3 symbols in total. Suddenly, Han Xiao recognized one symbol. His eyes narrowed. Boneless bird? Han Xiao immediately thought of Cecily a few days ago. He immediately searched in the crowd but found nothing. Cecily had disappeared. Han Xiao frowned, grabbed the flight attendant, described Cecily's appearance, and asked, "Where did this person go?" This flight attendant was the female flight attendant who had seduced Kurlad when they first boarded the spaceship. She was panicking and stuttering. That passenger was moved to the VIP cabin yesterday. Kurlad came closer and said nervously, "These are boneless bird scavengers. They must have been called by the middleman last time. How dare they attack us in public? If this spaceship can't handle it, we're all dead. I haven't lived long enough." Of course, no one has lived long enough. Cecily had a force behind him, so he could call for help. However, Han Xiao did not have a galactic force behind him, so there was nothing he could do. He was in a very passive position. Furthermore, there was no way to know what Cecily was thinking. Han Xiao could not really read minds, so he did not know what Cecily would do. Furthermore, if he started a fight on the spaceship, he would be chased off in a minute. Han Xiao calmed down and said, "Cecily is one of them, and he's also on the ship. Those scavengers won't destroy the ship. They'll definitely land. There are 2 possibilities. First, they'll cripple Shorthorn Star and threaten to destroy the spaceship so that we'll submit. Second, they can't do anything to Shorthorn Star and can only attack from the inside and land first. We can't deal with the former, but we can still try to resist the latter." "Then what should we do?" "You can only fight back if you get a weapon first." Han Xiaoxin's mind raced. Violence and lethal weapons were not allowed on the spaceship, except under special circumstances, such as biomass gear that could not be dismantled. All luggage and equipment are stored in the ship's warehouse. Okay, don't leave me behind. I can fight. Kurlad looked like he was following Han Xiao's lead. Han Xiao immediately grabbed the female stewardess and yelled, "Where's the warehouse?" The female stewardess heard the conversation between the two and widened her eyes in shock. She finally realized that the Godora man was actually a follower. She had misunderstood and thought that this low-key human was the leader. She quickly came back to her senses and pointed the way while trembling. Han Xiao did not say anything and was about to rush out of the hall. The female stewardess hurriedly said, "Hey, don't go. The spaceship has entered safe mode. The exit of the hall is locked. No one can get out." Bang! The players behind him all used their strongest attacks. With a loud bang, broken mechanical locks scattered all over the floor, and the metal door flew out. Han Xiao did not slow down at all. He rushed out with the others, leaving the passengers in the hall panicking and hesitating. The scavengers and Shorthorn Star were still in a stalemate. The situation was unclear. Most of the passengers were watching in fear. He was not acting on impulse. Han Technician never liked to let others decide the result. Whether the scavengers could break in or not, he had to plan ahead and take advantage of the situation. If Shorthorn Star could escape successfully, that would be the best result. If it fell, it would be crucial for him to take action in advance. It would be too late to start preparing after the enemy broke in. The group ran for almost 10 minutes. The vibrations from the attacks did not stop. They could feel the reaction getting stronger and stronger, which meant that Shorthorn Star was accelerating crazily. However, it still could not enter the warp-jump orbit. Han Xiao knew that something was wrong. Many pieces of equipment could prevent spaceships from entering the warp-jump. Since the scavengers were robbers, they would definitely be equipped with such equipment to prevent their prey from escaping. Suddenly, the spaceship vibrated dozens of times stronger than before, accompanied by a roaring explosion. Everyone staggered and almost fell. Han Zhao's expression froze. The space environment was a vacuum. The sound meant that the enemy had broken in and the shield had been breached. Oh my God, this captain jinxed it. The moment the sound was heard, a notification popped up on the interface. You have triggered an emergency mission, Protect Shorthorn Star. Mission Introduction. For some reason, a few groups of space scavengers have their eyes on your tour group. They are preparing to land on Shorthorn Planet and attack it. An endless stream of scavengers boarded the ship, intending to capture all the passengers in one fell swoop. Your fate is closely tied to this spaceship. Mission requirements. Defeat all the scavengers and protect Shorthorn Star. Reward. 350,000 experience, 1,500 ANAs, regional reputation unlocked. It seems that the scavengers chose the second method. In addition to the boneless bird, there are two other scavenger groups that I don't know. The reason why they acted together and attacked us is definitely not just to catch a group of slaves. Han Zhao's eyes flashed. He turned around and saw that the 20 or so players behind him were in a daze, which meant that they were looking at the interface. After thinking for a while, he knew that they had triggered the same mission. This meant that he did not need to spend his quota. Han Zhao did not have time to think about the reward. He turned on his communicator but realized that there was no signal. There was only one explanation for this situation, which was that the scavengers had some advanced equipment that could block communication. They were definitely using it to prevent their prey from calling for help from the nearby civilizations. It was clear that they were well prepared and determined to succeed. The enemy has already broken in. Han Zhao said in a deep voice, "We can't count on the guards of the spaceship. I don't want to wait for death. We have to protect this spaceship. I have a plan. First, we will go to the warehouse to get our weapons. Then, we will split into 3 groups. One group will go to the main control room, and the other group will go to the captain and the officers. They have the authority to control the spaceship, and the enemy will definitely go for these 2 targets when they come in. We are racing against time, and it is very likely that there will be a head-on battle. We know nothing about the enemy's strength, so we have to be careful. The last group will go find the emergency escape spaceship. Such a large spaceship definitely has such a measure. This is our last resort." It was very advantageous for the players to split up. They could communicate with each other through the interface and not be blocked. Using this function, Han Zhao could control the situation by asking the players around him. No one had any objections and followed his orders. Without further ado, Han Zhao led the team and rushed to the warehouse. On the side of Shorthorn Star, a hole was created in the shield. Before the shield could repair itself, 7 scavenger spaceships extended hard mechanical rams from the heads of the spaceships and smashed into Shorthorn Star. Thick smoke billowed out of the hole, and a large group of scavengers successfully boarded the spaceship and entered. Hundreds of scavengers held all kinds of guns and shot out beams and bullets. They fought fiercely with the bodyguards of Shorthorn Star. From time to time, someone would scream and fall. The gunshots were very intense. Most of the soldiers were ordinary people of various races. There were also a small number of supers. One of the spaceship bodyguards was an insectoid pugilist. He had 6 arms and used the 6-blade stream. He moved nimbly in the crowd, and the scavengers fell one after another with blood spurting out. Who? Suddenly, a huge black shadow covered this insectoid pugilist and quickly descended. The strong wind pressure was like a black hole, sucking away the air nearby. Everyone around felt suffocated. Hiss! The insectoid pugilist let out a shrill cry and raised his 6 blades to block. Boom! The insectoid pugilist disappeared instantly. The deck caved in, but the edges of the deck protruded like a crater. A huge war hammer was slowly raised. The head of the hammer, which was about 1 square meter in size, was stained with the green acidic blood of the insectoid pugilist. White smoke was coming out of it, and it kept dripping. With one hit, the insectoid pugilist was turned into a paper man. Serpent Braid carried the long silver hammer with one hand. The alloy handle of the hammer rubbed against the rock skin, making a cracking sound. He yelled, "Kill all the guards quickly. The gazers will clean up the main control room, and the Beast Hoof will control the hostages." For this mission, Serpent Braid had invited the help of 2 other groups of scavengers called the Gazers and the Beast Hoof. As for the others, Chapter 3:18. Has the distress signal been sent? In the main control room, the captain was sweating profusely, and the operators beside him were panicking. "Our communication has been jammed. All signals have been intercepted." "How is that possible?" Short Horn Star's communication system is a high-grade product bought from a galactic civilization. How can these scavengers have such a high-grade jamming device? The captain was furious. Interstellar communication was universal and had a variety of technologies, so jamming devices were very expensive. Furthermore, the enemy had an anti-jump device that could disrupt space and limit warp. The captain was on the verge of breaking down. Did these scavengers have to be so capable? Short Horn Star could not escape or call for help. It was surrounded by scavengers. They could still hold on for a short period of time with the shield and armor of the spaceship. There was still hope for them to escape. Perhaps the high-energy reaction here would be captured by Ghidorah's detectors, and the guards would come to help them. In a prosperous galactic region, the ruling civilization would maintain the security of the galactic region. Detectors were very sensitive, and some of them were fixed in position. They were monitored by artificial intelligence in real time, which was equivalent to a warning zone. If something like what happened to Short Horn Star happened, they could move toward the detectors and alert them indirectly. Usually, the signal strength of the detectors was military grade. There was a high chance of breaking through the jamming device, or the warning zone was larger than the jamming device. At this time, Short Horn Star was flying toward the nearest detector. They could not warp, so they could only fly. At full speed, they would reach the warning zone in about 20 to 25 minutes. The scavenger spaceship was small and sensitive. It had a strong jamming ability, and its attack power was mediocre. The shield could barely hold on for this period of time. However, the enemy that had boarded the spaceship was in imminent danger. The bodyguards on the spaceship were retreating, and the enemy's target was definitely the main control room. Once the main control room was taken over, it would mean that Short Horn Star was lost. They could only dream of escaping. Only a third of the bodyguards are left. They're retreating. They can't stop the enemy. It's over. The scavengers are heading toward the main control room. "Captain, what do we do now?" An assistant looked at the screen and trembled nervously. "Try negotiating." The captain clenched his teeth and turned on the radio. With a glimmer of hope, he expressed that he was willing to pay for the passage fee. There was no response from the scavengers. It was obvious that they wanted to swallow the entire spaceship. The scavengers had blocked the signals that were emitted outwards. The ship's internal broadcast was an independent line, so it could still be used. On the screen, the guards fell to the ground one after another. The captain was burning with anxiety. Suddenly, his expression changed and he hurriedly asked, "Quick, pull up the passenger list. Is there anyone powerful?" Soon, someone filtered through the passenger list, and the identity information of a few people was displayed. They were all combat personnel with some small names, and the most famous of them was the high-level mercenary Green Knight. Green Knight. It's him. That's great. The captain was overjoyed. He hurriedly turned on the radio and said, "Dear passengers, the situation is very urgent. The scavengers are rushing to the main control room. I hope that passengers with combat strength can help." This is also saving yourselves. I will pay a high reward. In the current situation, they had no choice but to make every possible effort. They had to defeat the enemy boarding the ship in order to have a chance to escape. The passengers were their last straw of hope. The captain could only place his hopes on the passengers, especially the famous Green Knight. He secretly prayed. The warhammer swept horizontally, creating a shockwave that sent a large group of spaceship guards flying. Serpent Braid swung the warhammer with one hand and did not stop moving. His entire body was shrouded in stone-gray pugilist flames. Bullets and low-energy beams hit his body, but they only left white marks on his stone-like skin. This was his racial talent, which made him very resistant to attack. He laughed maniacally, and like a hot knife through butter, he beat the guards until they were forced to retreat. The battle inside the spaceship continued, and the external shield kept exploding, mixing into a flamboyant tune. Where are we now? Boss, the VIP cabin is in front. Cecily is waiting for you there. Soon, the metal door of the VIP hall appeared in front of them. It was locked. This time, Serpent Braid held the handle of the warhammer with both hands, spun it twice, and smashed it. With a bang, the door caved in, and it flew in. Cecily walked out with a smile. You're finally here. Well done. Where is that god or a guy? The economy cabin. Very good. Serpent Braid grinned, turned around, and saw a group of cowering passengers. He ordered, "Capture all of them as hostages. Some of you stay behind to guard." A group of scavengers took out small black metal rings and put them on the hands and feet of the passengers, which automatically extended into mechanical shackles. They were very thick and tightly locked the hands and feet. Ordinary supers would not be able to break free, and this group of passengers was captured as hostages. There were a few supers among the passengers, but there were too many scavengers, and Serpent Braid was too strong. They were afraid of death and did not dare resist. Then, Serpent Braid went to the economy cabin and captured this batch of passengers. He searched carefully, but he could not find the god or a guy. He was furious. I just moved to the VIP cabin yesterday, and the spaceship has not docked. He must still be on the spaceship, Cecily said hurriedly. Serpent Braid grabbed the head of a passenger and roared, "Where did that god or a guy go?" They broke the door and ran out," the person replied hurriedly. Bang! His head was crushed, and blood splattered on the faces of the other hostages. Screams could be heard everywhere. Serpent Braid waved his hand and said angrily, "He actually ran away. Go find him immediately." Before he could finish, the voice of another group of scavengers came from the communicator. "Request for help, request for help. We encountered powerful supers on the way to the main control room. We were stopped. Request for help. Boss, the target is on the spaceship. He won't be able to escape. Let's take over the main control room first. As long as we seize the spaceship, we will be able to find the target sooner or later," Cecily said hurriedly. Serpent Braid nodded. "Then, let's go to the main control room. Cecily, take some people and stay behind to control this group of passengers." "No problem." The economy cabin passengers were shackled and thrown to the side. The scavengers raised their guns and aimed at the passengers. The passengers did not dare to act rashly and trembled in fear. Serpent Braid led the people to the main control room. The spaceship was not small, so it took them a while to arrive at the scene. The corpses of scavengers were everywhere. Serpent Braid's vision flashed, and a fountain of green light erupted at the end of the tunnel. A dozen scavengers crashed into the wall, their bodies twisted, their bones broken. The Green Knight blocked the tunnel of the main control room with a cold face. The green light spread out and wrapped around his body like ripples. His mechanical limbs were reflected in the dark green light. He was actually an Esper who controlled some kind of strange energy that was green in the spectrum. It could be shaped, and it had offensive and defensive power. It was a variant of the force field Esper ability. This was the origin of his nickname. Look, it's the Green Knight, Lurden, a high-level mercenary, a remnant of the Sunil race. Serpent Braid's eyes were filled with desire. He dragged his war hammer and approached with excitement. Finally, a powerful guy. Lurden's eyes were cold. He was a mercenary, and the reason he helped was mostly because of the reward promised by the captain. Otherwise, he would have gone to find the escaped spaceship long ago. The mechanical arm in his left hand folded and deformed, revealing a black muzzle. Laser beams shot out at an extremely fast speed, penetrating the chests of a few scavengers and leaving bloody holes. The other scavengers hurriedly looked for cover and counterattacked. Serpent Braid was fearless. He charged forward in large strides. The laser beams hit his body, leaving only spots of charred black. He swung his warhammer, rolling up a dense gray aura and smashed it down. Lurden raised his right hand and released a green light, forming a burning light shield above his head. Bang! The energy ring burst open, and the green light splashed everywhere. The echo buzzed. Rewind time to about 10 minutes ago. In the warehouse at the stern of Shorthorn Star, far away from the battlefield, the sound of battle was almost inaudible. The door of the warehouse was wide open, and the way it was opened was very fitting for the aesthetics of violence. Han Shao and the others were searching in the warehouse. Found it. Han Shao finally found his box. He opened the combination lock, and white cold air flowed out. The Amphipter mechanical suit was inside. He quickly put on the equipment and turned on the system. The sleeping mechanical suit lit up, and the energy core shone brightly. The blue energy flowed through all the tubes like blood. With the equipment in hand, he was in great condition. Han Technician relaxed and put on all the weapons. Suddenly, he remembered Kurlad's request. He thought about it, kept the wrath of Garrett, and threw all the other golden balls to Kurlad. Your equipment. Take it. Don't drag me down. Kurlad was stunned. He put away the balls and said seriously, I will fight with you. Only half of the players were online. More than 20 players had gotten their weapons. Han Shao said in a low voice, let's split up. Now let's assign the teams. The plan was to split into 3 teams. Mad Blade, fried eggplants with fish, and another team would control the emergency aircraft and find a way out. The Temple of God, Dynasty, and the others would cut off the scavengers' escape route and the entrance to Shorthorn Star. Kurlad and the rest of the players would follow him to the main control room. This was the most important route. At this moment the broadcast sounded. The captain's request for help from the passengers was heard. After hearing it, Han Zhao's eyes lit up. Chapter 319. The space inside the spaceship was limited, so he could not wear the Batwings aircraft. Instead, he used the electromagnetic hover boots and mini-jet maneuvers and sprinted toward the main control room. His gliding speed was much faster than stepping on a banana peel. Han Shao was very experienced. He knew that the main control room was extremely important. In order to provide support in time, he moved at full speed. Kurlad and the others were left behind, so he did not have time to care about them. While he was traveling alone, he was analyzing the enemy's strength in his mind. Shorthorn Star has not been taken down after so long, so there must be no Grade B supers among the scavengers. Otherwise, the spaceship would have changed owners long ago. The strongest enemy is at most Grade C or C+. With my equipment and templates, the chances of me being on par with the enemy are very high. However, the enemy must have many subordinate. The standard weapons in the galaxy are all different, so their attack power should not be too low. It will be dangerous if they focus fire on me. Han Shao was calm as he listed all the factors that could affect the situation in his mind. He knew his own strength very well and would not be arrogant. He would not blindly overestimate the enemy. Although there were many supers in the galaxy, high-level combatants were not everywhere. Most of them were still at Grade E and D, and those who had just entered were all youngsters who still needed to grow up. From grade C onwards, one would have a well-formed combat power. In the Shattered Star Ring, grade C supers were the backbone, grade B supers were the rarer high-end power, and grade A supers were the rarer calamity grade supers. The differences between the three were very clear. Grade C supers had decent individual combat power and could fight against a small army on the ground. Grade B supers had the ability to destroy cities, and their stamina was greatly increased. They could also be used as a single soldier to flatten a spaceship. Grade A supers were the calamity grade supers, and they could cause natural disasters on the surface of a planet. Some of their powerful abilities could even destroy the surface of a planet. Of course, this would take some time. The sound of the collision echoed in the tunnel, and the aftershock made the metal walls tremble. The green light collided with the war hammer again, and the two of them took a big step back. Chi! A gust of hot air blew out of Lurden's back, releasing the pressure from the mechanical body. He breathed heavily, and his face was covered in sweat. His already pale face became even paler. Esper abilities required energy, and the mechanical prosthetic body did not produce energy. Lurden's Esper ability did not last very long. The mechanical prosthetic gave him a plethora of combat weapons, and his body was tougher, so he would not die so easily. However, it also came with a price. He would not last long and would wither very quickly. At this time, the mechanical prosthetic body was damaged everywhere, emitting electric sparks. Serpent Braid was very fierce and strong, but Lurden was confident that he would not lose to him. However, the most troublesome thing was that this was not a one-on-one battle. Hundreds of scavengers were hiding and shooting at him secretly. He had to pay attention to stray bullets at all times, so he wasted a lot of energy to create an energy shield. His attention was also diverted, and many of his injuries were caused by the other scavengers' sneak attack. At the end of the tunnel behind Lurden was the door of the main control room. Once he left, the main control room would be in danger, which greatly restricted his actions. He did not dare to go around Serpent Braid to deal with the scavengers first. The door of the main control room was tightly shut, and the situation outside was transmitted to the monitor. Everyone in the main control room was on tenterhooks. The captain's palms were sweaty, and he pressed hard on the table. He murmured, "We will reach the warning zone in 12 minutes. You have to hang in there." Intense gunshots sounded again. Lurden could only create a light shield to protect himself. Serpent Braid laughed viciously, and without giving Lurden a chance to breathe, he pounced again and smashed down with his war hammer. Lurden's eyes were bloodshot, and his expression was cold. He held on with all his might, but the green light shield was dimming at a speed visible to the naked eye. Suddenly, the light shield shattered, and the war hammer hit the left side of Lurden's body without any resistance. Dong! Half of Lurden's body exploded, and parts flew everywhere like a blooming flower, hitting the wall and spilling oil all over the floor. Lurden flew out and crashed into the wall, but there was no pain on his face. He was a semi-artificial body, and a broken mechanical body did not feel pain. This artificial body technology was more mature than the germinal organization's half-baked technology, and of course, it would not harm his life. Flames suddenly spewed out from the soles of his feet, and he flew up, leaped over Serpent Braid, and fled the battlefield without hesitation. The reward was the reason he helped, but Lurden valued his life more. With half of his body broken and the situation critical, he immediately fled without hesitation. He was so rational that he was indifferent. This spaceship will definitely be lost. No matter what the scavengers want to do, I am not their target. We should not be far from the warning zone now. As long as I get on the emergency aircraft, I will be able to escape. The scavengers will not chase after me. Seeing Lurden turn around and flee, the captain's body suddenly turned soft. He sat down on the chair and closed his eyes in pain. It's over. It's all F***king over. The Green Knight had been beaten away, and the enemy was so close to the main control room. What hope was there? Serpent Braid suppressed his desire to chase after them. Remembering the main mission, he waved his hand and led them to the main control room door. Panic and bewilderment filled the air. Everyone was terrified. With every step the scavenger took forward, the captain's heart sank. This situation was already hopeless. The captain could not think of any way to turn the situation around. He could not help but think of his wife, child, and mistress back home. He could not help but feel sad. Just as Serpent Braid was about to smash open the door, he suddenly heard a boom. A surge of heat quickly approached from behind. He hurriedly turned around, and a thick beam of hot light was rapidly expanding in his sight. Serpent Braid hurriedly raised his war hammer in front of him, and the flames condensed into an invisible force field. The beam of light hit the target. Bang! The war hammer instantly turned into a burning red soldering iron. Serpent Braid screamed, and the war hammer fell out of his hand. His arms and chest glowed like embers, and they were still burning. What? The captain's expression suddenly changed. At the other end of the passage, Han Shao was holding a strange golden gun. White smoke was still rising from the muzzle. The Wrath of Garrett's interface attack was 513 damage, Flaming Will was 2.7 times, Ambush critical hit was 2 times, and Hold Your Breath, aim increased shooting power by 30%. After the defense reduction, this shot had dealt 2,124 damage. Too bad it didn't trigger fatal true damage. Han Shao glanced at the scene and raised his eyebrows. Looks like I arrived in time. Serpent Braid struggled to get up, picked up the warhammer, and let it burn his hand. He stared at Han Shao. Another one. Kill him. The other scavengers turned around and focused their fire. Bullets and beams covered the narrow passage, and there was no way to dodge. Han Xiaoxin summoned the hovering shield shuttle and formed an electromagnetic shield in front of him, which rippled under the rain of bullets. Serpent Braid swung the warhammer, but he did not attack Han Shao. Instead, he turned around and smashed the door of the main control room. With a boom, the door fell and the main control room was exposed. The people inside hurriedly backed away from the door. The captain knocked into a chair and fell to the ground. He looked up at the tall Serpent Braid with a face full of fear. Just as Serpent Braid was about to enter the main control room, a dark red stream of light lit up between Han Zhao's eyebrows. A female figure with a seductive figure appeared behind him. Her slightly curly red hair danced like seaweed. Character Summon Card. Hela! Without hesitation, Han Shao threw all 3 psychic shock at Serpent Braid. Han Technician had just seen the combat information. Serpent Braid was also level 70, a pugilist. The Rock Giant bloodline gave him high physical resistance and high HP. Correspondingly, his psychic resistance was his weakness. Serpent Braid's figure froze. The next second, thick blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. He felt as if his brain had exploded. The world was spinning, and he lost control of his body. He fell to the ground in front of the main control room and could not get up. Han Shao took large strides and charged past the scavengers. His biochemical muscles bulged, and he grabbed Serpent Braid's braid, swung him to the other side, and smashed a huge hole in the ground. Their positions were switched. Now it was Han Shao blocking the door. This series of actions resolved the crisis in the main control room. The captain felt as if he had just walked one round on the edge of life and death. He gulped and stuttered, "You're a passenger too?" In his nervousness, the captain could not express his meaning. Actually, what he meant was that this mysterious mechanical suit warrior seemed to be even stronger than the slightly famous Green Knight. But why was his name not on the passenger list when he checked it earlier? He had thought that he was in a desperate situation, but Han Zhao's appearance made the captain see the light again. His heart almost jumped out of his throat. This time, Han Shao turned around and said, "I heard that you will pay a reward?" Although his face was covered by the mechanical suit and his tone was very calm, for some reason, the captain felt as if he could see a face full of a cunning businessman's smile. It was probably an illusion. After the disappointment of the Green Knight, the captain did not dare hesitate. He could only grab onto this life-saving straw and hurriedly said, "Yes, I can pay a lot of money. I hope you can stop them." A notification suddenly appeared on the interface. You have triggered the mission, a captain's request. Mission introduction. The captain of Shorthorn Star has decided to hire you to protect the spaceship and his safety. Mission requirements. Shorthorn Star is successfully defended and the captain survives. Reward. 8,000 Anas. 8,000. That's quite a lot. The purchasing power of Anas was very high. Not to mention Han Zhao's knowledge, just Kurlad's salary as an investigator was only 4,000 Anas per year, not including the benefits of a civil servant. This guy was from the Moonlight clan, but he could still save more than 800 Anas. Han Shao was very satisfied. For the same event, he could use the initiative to squeeze more profits out of different people. He was very good at using this method when he was a substitute leveler in the past, and he could achieve twice the result with half the effort. Many players also had this habit. When they knew that they were going to a place to fight monsters, they would accept all the related missions first and complete them in one go to get more rewards. Chapter 320. After accepting the mission, Han Shao felt even more motivated. The mission required the captain to not die. At this time, the door of the main control room was knocked open, and the passage was guarded by scavengers. He could only block the door of the main control room and keep all the enemies out. Tut 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 tut, a rain of bullets and beams came at him. The hovering shield shuttles formed an electromagnetic shield and blocked most of the attack. Those that escaped were blocked by the armor. Most of these scavengers were ordinary people. They were very weak, but they had lethal weapons. There were gunpowder guns, electromagnetic guns, and even beam guns. Although they were the weakest weapons, the focus fire still gave Han Shao some pressure. Serpent Braid struggled to get up. He was still stunned. The 3 psychic attacks did not deal much damage, but the debuff made him feel very uncomfortable. This was because he had been careless. When he saw that Han Shao was wearing a mechanical suit, he thought that he was a mechanic. He did not expect that he could use psychic attacks. However, psychic attacks did not have any warning signs. After suffering a small loss, Serpent Braid had a rough idea of Han Zhao's strength. He was a strong enemy that was not weaker than the Green Knight. Serpent Braid was very competitive. Just as he was about to raise his hammer and charge, Cecily's voice came from the communicator. "Boss, this spaceship is approaching the warning zone. We don't have much time left. Don't waste time on a strong enemy. Quickly take over the main control room." Serpent Braid frowned and suppressed his fighting spirit. He whistled and shouted, "Guys, focus fire." His subordinates immediately opened fire, and the pressure on Han Shao increased. Serpent Braid raised his hammer and wanted to use the opportunity when Han Shao was distracted to go around him and rush into the main control room. As long as they seized the main control room, they could turn off the shield, and the scavengers in the outer space would be able to destroy the spaceship at any time. It was the same for the passengers when they lost the ship, so everyone on the ship could only surrender. That way, there would be no need to fight anymore. Han Shao was suppressed by the firepower and could not escape. His eyes flashed, and 4 sonic spheres flew out and blocked in front of Serpent Braid. In order to protect the main control room, he had to block the door and be focused on. Han Shao deliberately entered a passive situation, but he did not panic at all. Kurlad and a group of players were his backup. Once the backup arrived, he would be able to focus on dealing with Serpent Braid. Serpent Braid had some strength, so Han Shao could not go around him to deal with the minions first. Moreover, Han Shao could not leave his position at the entrance. If he dealt with Serpent Braid first, the scavengers would be able to interfere. If he wanted to solve this problem, he had to use a snake, devil. However, the effect was a 7-day cooldown. The current situation was not so bad that he needed to use his trump card, so Han Shao chose to restrain the enemy and delay until reinforcements arrived. He knew what to do. The nerves connection allowed him to control the floating mechanical weapons. This technique was very useful as it allowed him to fight on two fronts. Sonic spheres and magnetic chain split blades attacked like butterflies. To Serpent Braid, they were like a group of annoying bees. They were agile and stinging. Serpent Braid wanted to withstand the attacks and rush over, but he was blocked by Han Shao, who focused fire on him. He could not break through. Serpent Braid was enraged. He swung his warhammer and destroyed 1 or 2 machines from time to time. Bang bang bang. As time passed, the durability of Amphiptera decreased by a lot. Han Shao did not feel the slightest bit of heartache. He had brought many spare parts with him and dealt with them calmly. He basically took a defensive stance and neutralized Serpent Braid's attack. He was like an unsurpassable wall, making Serpent Braid more and more furious. "Boss, we don't have enough time. We can't take down the main control room." Cecily shouted in the comms again. "Shut up." Serpent Braid was furious. He swung his warhammer crazily. Seeing that Han Zhao's mech was getting more and more damaged, he had the illusion that he could defeat this opponent in front of him with just a little more. "Boss, don't be rash. Our target is Ghidorah. That's the main point. It's fine if we can't seize this spaceship. We don't have much time. Don't worry about the main control room. Go find Ghidorah first. As long as we take him away, the employer will pay us." Aren't the people from Beast Hoof looking for the target? They've searched half of the spaceship and still haven't found the target. The spaceship is too big, and they don't have enough manpower. Serpent Braid cursed. He suddenly put away his warhammer and retreated. He shouted, "Go, don't worry about this. Go capture Ghidorah." The scavengers started to retreat. Serpent Braid gave up on the main control room that seemed to be within his reach. His obsession with Kurlad was unusual. At this time, Han Shao finally knew the scavengers' target. He was slightly surprised. So the scavengers were here for Kurlad? Making such a big fuss over one person, Han Shao felt that there was definitely something going on. Inform everyone to change the plan. Give up on the main control room and focus on searching for Ghidorah. Cecily, take the hostages back to our spaceship. These hostages are worth some money. The rest of you, search for the target. Seeing that the chances of capturing Short-Horn Star were slim, the scavengers changed their strategy. They would first capture the target, then leave in the spaceship they came in. There would be people guarding the scavenger spaceship that was embedded in Short-Horn Star. This was the scavengers' escape route. After giving the order, Serpent Braid glared at Han Shao. His eyes seemed to be saying that he was lucky to have spared his life. At this time, a golden light burst out from the other end of the tunnel. The spear flashed, and a few scavengers were pierced through the chest and fell to the ground. Kurlad finally arrived. He held Ghidorah's spear in one hand and a golden shield in the other. He blocked the way. Han Shao and Kurlad stood in front of each other, blocking Serpent Braid and the rest in the middle. Ghidorah! Serpent Braid was not surprised. He did not expect his prey to appear just like that. Looking at the situation, Serpent Braid seemed to have understood something. He looked at Han Shao and said arrogantly, "So, you're in cahoots with the Ghidorahs. You wanted to work together to deal with us. Humph, you delivered the target I wanted right to my doorstep." This development was exactly what Serpent Braid wanted. He did not have to look for his target everywhere. He just had to defeat and capture Ghidorah. Serpent Braid shouted and rushed toward Kurlad with his warhammer. Dong! Kurlad raised his shield to block, but his arm went soft. He could not withstand Serpent Braid's strength. Just as Serpent Braid was about to chase after him, more than 10 players appeared behind Kurlad. They were all supers with a certain level of combat power. The scavenger's advantage in numbers was gone. With so many supers, it was more than enough to wipe them all out. Shock finally appeared on Serpent Braid's face. His impulsiveness and anger turned into shock. How could there be so many supers in this low-level tour group? Before they took action, the scavengers had estimated the strength of Shorthorn Star. Logically speaking, the supers in low-level tour groups would at most be grade C, and they would not be too strong. The strong were usually quite rich. If they had the money, they would definitely buy their own spaceship. Even if they did not, they would still take a higher-level tour group. For example, low-level tour groups like Shorthorn Star were like buses, while high-level tour groups were like trains and high-speed trains. Serpent Braid was already surprised by the appearance of the Green Knight, but now, there were so many supers with grade C strength. This was completely out of his expectations. Where did these poor supers come from? And they even came in groups. I miscalculated. Han Xiao chuckled. I have helpers too. The next moment, his smile disappeared and he said coldly, Go! Han Xiao, Kurlad, and the others brazenly attacked Serpent Braid, who was caught off guard, and a one-sided massacre broke out. The situation suddenly reversed. *T. Boss is done for. Cecily trembled as if a cold wind had pierced through his spine. He was currently in the economy cabin, leading a group of scavengers to guard the passengers and hostages. What should we do now? We can't save Boss. Let's return to the spaceship first. Cecily felt that the situation was out of control, and he felt uneasy. He only wanted to return to the spaceship as soon as possible so that he would have a backup plan. His mission was to bring the hostages onto the spaceship and comfort himself that this was not considered betrayal. He had no intention of helping Serpent Braid. Most scavengers were very selfish, and their loyalty was low. Cecily was more concerned about whether he could leave safely. Boss wants me to bring the hostages back to the spaceship. Let's move quickly. Cecily could not wait to give orders to his subordinate. But halfway through his sentence, Cecily suddenly stopped and looked at the corner of the hall in a daze. That corner was originally empty, but just a moment ago, a dozen people had suddenly appeared. Hao Tian, Sleepy Winter, Rainy Kim, Pork Bun, and a few other high-level players had agreed to finish their meal and come online at the same time. The players looked around blankly, their faces filled with shock. Hey! What's going on? Why are all the passengers captured? Who are these people with guns? Why is the spaceship shaking nonstop, and there are gunshots in the distance? Are they under attack? The scavengers in the hall were all stunned, their eyes wide open. When they kidnapped the hostages, they had checked all the rooms. Where did these people come from? Are they all ghosts? Both parties stared at each other, their faces filled with confusion. The scavengers subconsciously turned their guns. Hao Tian and the others saw this situation and immediately understood what was going on. What the F***ck is there to think about? Kill them! With a burst of energy, the scavengers were immediately pressed to the ground. Cecily was shocked. Chapter 321. Mad Blade and the rest of the players were waiting at the emergency escape airship's gate, bored. The others are fighting, and we're the only ones doing nothing. Don't you think we're leeching? Fragrant Bear said. He was one of the 3 carriages of fried eggplants with fish, a cute boy. Our mission is very important too, controlling the escape route. Mad Blade paused for a while and said in frustration, but we're indeed leeching. Sun Eggplant stroked his stubble and said, we haven't gotten to know each other. You're the biggest dark horse in this pro league, the #1 mechanical pugilist in China. TSK, you're quite famous. Mad Blade was embarrassed and said humbly, don't flatter me. I'm just lucky. The top teams like to interact with players with potential. With results, they would be respected by their peers. They would not ignore Mad Blade just because he was a newbie. The few of them had a good chat. After a few rounds of flattery, Dancing Fish Dragon suddenly said, "Are you interested in signing a contract with fried eggplants with fish?" Mad Blade quickly waved his hands. "I like fried eggplants with fish a lot, but Rivervale has been good to me. They're planning to build a new team with me as the core." Dancing Fish Dragon nodded and continued to be silent. After chatting for a while, footsteps came from afar. Mad Blade and the rest stopped talking and looked in the direction of the footsteps cautiously. Lurden appeared, frowned at the players and asked, "You're not scavengers. Who are you?" "And who are you?" Frenzied Sword asked. Lurden did not answer this question. He could tell that the players were not scavengers from their attire. He was a little surprised and wondered if they were friends or foes. Why were they guarding the escape airship? "Are you passengers?" Lurden's eyes moved as he suddenly asked. Sort of. You're escaping too." Lurden pointed at the dozen or so airships and said with a deep voice, "If you're willing to pay, I can protect you on the way." Lurden still wanted to make a profit when they were escaping for their lives. "We're not escaping. Black cough cough, someone told us to guard this place. They're resisting the scavengers on the airship. The situation is good. Why are we escaping? There are still people resisting?" Lurden's eyes sparkled. He asked, "How many companions do you have?" 30 or 40. Lurden started thinking. When he was running away, he thought that the main control room would fall without his protection. However, he could still hear the faint sounds of fighting along the way. Now, he finally figured out that there was another group of people resisting. This group of people seemed to be quite strong. From the looks of it, the main control room was guarded. If that was the case, there was no need for him to escape. "If we go back now, we can still help and earn the captain's pay." Lurden changed his mind and gave up on running away. He said in a low voice, "I'm a mercenary. My code name is Green Knight. Where are your friends fighting? I can help them." Mad Blade and the others looked at each other and pointed out that a group of players was currently fighting with the enemy at the place where the scavengers had boarded the ship. They were trying to cut off the enemy's retreat. After getting the information he wanted, Lurden turned around and killed his way back. After a short scream, only Serpent Braid was left standing in the tunnel. He was on the verge of collapsing. His body was full of wounds, and he was panting like a beast at the end of its road. Kurlod fought side by side with the players and cleared out all the scavenger minions. Serpent Braid saw that the situation was not good and wanted to fight his way out of the encirclement. However, Han Shao, who was not restrained, made him understand why the flowers were so red. In a head-on battle, Han Shao completely suppressed Serpent Braid. He hung him up and beat him. Serpent Braid's HP was almost at death's door. His hand that was holding the war hammer was shaking. "You still want to struggle?" Han Zhao's voice came through the mechanical suit's visor. With the sonic sphere revolving behind him, he said, "You're dead meat if you continue to fight. A scavenger leader like you usually has a bounty on his head. Put down your weapon, and I'll let you go to prison in one piece. Otherwise, there's no need to lose a part of your body." Han Shao was very curious about the scavenger's motive for capturing Kurlod. Although the Godora people had a high status in the Colton star cluster, they were not as valuable as a spaceship. These scavengers definitely had an employer behind them. Han Shao wanted to keep them alive to ask for more details. Clang! Serpent Braid let go of his hand, and the war hammer fell to the ground. He could not stand still and fell to the ground, panting heavily. His expression was indignant, but his actions showed that he had compromised. Although Serpent Braid was impulsive, he was not brainless. Going to prison alive was definitely better than dying on the spot. Everyone locked Serpent Braid up and made sure that he could not resist. Even though Serpent Braid was sitting, his upper body was still slightly more than 2 meters tall. When Han Xiao saw this huge body, a thought appeared in his mind. This guy is a hybrid between a rock giant and a human. With such a huge difference in body size, it doesn't matter if the rock giant is his father or mother. It's still very scary. Han Xiao quickly stopped to prevent himself from thinking about some terrifying scenes. This atmosphere is too unrestrained. True love does not discriminate between genders, it does not discriminate between races. Speaking of which, mating might not be true love. I can't afford to offend this guy. Han Xiao quickly calmed himself down and got rid of the random thoughts in his mind. Tell me, which organization hired you, and why do you want to capture the God Aura people? Serpent Braid snorted angrily. Don't think that I'll tell you. Not selling information about our employer is a professional ethics in our line of work. Han Xiao sneered and threatened, we can keep you alive to exchange for the bounty, but we don't necessarily need to keep you in one piece. Hurry up and give me some information, or I'll make you lose some. My employer is Darkstar. Serpent Braid quickly backed down. Han Xiao curled his lips. A scavenger talking about ethics with me? Are you kidding me? Kurlad's expression suddenly changed. Darkstar. When he mentioned it, Han Xiao remembered that Darkstar and God Aura were sworn enemies. Serpent Braid explained the cause and effect. Darkstar has been secretly buying pure-blooded God Aura people. It seems that they are carrying out some kind of blood sacrifice, and the price is very high. My people found this God Aura person. You should know that the chances of a pure-blooded God Aura riding on a low-level tour group with weak defenses are very low. This is an opportunity to make money, so we contacted Darkstar. They settled on a price and hired us to capture God Aura people. That's what happened. The pure-blooded Godorans had a very high status, and the investigators who were active in the outside world all had their own spaceship. They would almost never take a low-grade tour group. This time, they were unlucky and were discovered by the scavengers. Furthermore, Darkstar had secretly hired them, so they had attracted this attack. Han Xiao did not know whether to laugh or cry. The enemy's target was indeed not this group of natives. Because low-level tour groups were very weak, the scavengers dared to attack. Han Xiao wanted to ride on a high-level tour group, but Kurlad was poor and did not have much money. He could do whatever he wanted with money, but he could only be wretched without money. In the end, it's all because you are poor, Han Xiao grumbled. Kurlad was furious. Damn, is there still justice in this world when the people who robbed me think I'm poor? Although he was not the target, he was still in danger because of this. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and thought to himself, Darkstar. This organization is related to the mutation disaster. I didn't expect to come into contact with them so quickly. I'll meet them sooner or later. After the crisis in the main control room was resolved, Han Xiao asked the players beside him. The players used the interface to communicate with each other, ignoring distance and obstacles. He used this method to monitor the progress of the other players. Shorthorn Star was about to enter the warning zone, and the scavengers on the ship were all rushing to their own spaceships to escape. The players who went to cut off the scavengers' escape route were from Dynasty and Temple of God. They were fighting fiercely at the location where the enemy had boarded the ship. There was another leader in the scavengers' team, and his strength was similar to Serpent Braid. He was like a mini-boss, and Dynasty and Temple of God were having a hard time fighting him. Han Xiao decided to go and help. At this time, the captain walked over and said gratefully, "That's great. The main control room is protected. It's all thanks to you. As long as you stay here, this spaceship will be safe." Han Xiao interrupted him and said, "My companions are preventing the enemy from escaping. I'm going to help. This God Aura guy will stay here with these people to protect the main control room." "You're not staying?" The captain was shocked, and his face was filled with unwillingness. He mumbled, Don't worry about those scavengers who escaped. It's fine as long as we are fine. The captain did not feel safe at all. He did not care whether the scavengers escaped or not. He only wanted Han Xiao to stay and protect him. Only then would he feel safe. Chapter 322. Han Xiao naturally did not want to stay behind. At this time, the operator in the main control room said in surprise, "We have entered the detection range of the model energy detector. The database shows that there are God Aura guards in this area. They will appear in at most 20 minutes. The captain was overjoyed and heaved a sigh of relief. He immediately broadcasted the good news and comforted the passengers. Seeing this, Han Xiao gave Kurlad a few instructions and went to support them alone. Cecily panicked and ran toward the spaceship alone. His subordinates were all captured by Hao Tian and the others. He was the only one who escaped when he saw that the situation was not good. However, he was the only one who escaped. When he arrived at the place where the scavengers boarded the spaceship, he heard the sound of battle. Cecily quickly stopped and looked into the distance. He saw that the scavengers who stayed behind were fighting with a group of supers. He recognized these people. They were Ghidorah's companions, a group of powerful natives. The battle was at a stalemate. The leader stayed behind and led his subordinates to fight with the players from Dynasty and Temple of God to protect the scavenger spaceship. The leader of the Gazers was a psychic. He looked like a birdman with wings and an eagle's head. He specialized in psychic attacks and was the most troublesome enemy for the current players. He had low psychic resistance and could easily be stunned. He alone held the players back. Cecily hurriedly ran over and shouted, "Let me go up!" When the scavengers saw that it was a comrade, they all opened up a path. The leader of the Gazers turned around and grabbed him. "Where are the hostages?" he asked coldly. No, I was ambushed." The leader of the Gazers was furious. They could not catch the God Aura person, so this mission had failed. The hostages were their final reward, but they were also gone. Did this not mean that this mission was a waste? They had lost many people, and even the leader of the boneless birds, Serpent Braid, was captured. That bastard Serpent Braid called us over without investigating the background of this ship. This isn't good business. When Beast Hoof's people come back, we will retreat. You get in there." The leader of the Gazers kicked Cecily back into the spaceship. Soon, another group of scavengers returned. The situation of the Temple of God and Dynasty worsened, and the situation became even more stalemate. The leader of the Gazers ordered them to retreat while fighting. They were about to return to the spaceship and escape from Shorthorn Star. The players could do nothing about it and could not stop it at all. In the distance, a chain of laser cannons shot over and killed several scavengers. Lurden finally arrived at the scene. He looked calm. Although his left mechanical arm had been destroyed, there was still a secret muzzle hidden in his crotch that was shooting high-temperature lasers. The scavenger hurriedly walked onto the bridge and was about to run back to the spaceship. A green light flashed in Lurden's eyes, and he roared in a low voice. He raised his hand and created many green light curtains that blocked the entrance of the spaceship, preventing the scavenger from entering. "Don't just stand there. I can't last much longer. Hold them back." Lurden yelled at the players. He was sweating profusely. The battle with Serpent Braid had cost him a lot of energy. Maintaining the green light curtains required his full concentration. If it were not for the help of the other passengers, he would not have dared to do this. As long as he could hold them back for a while, these scavengers would not be able to escape once the guards arrived. "Green Knight!" The leader of the Gazers roared. His psychic power exploded, and a whirlwind appeared around him. The thick psychic power instantly hit Lurden hard. Lurden groaned. Blood flowed out of his nose, but he held on and did not let the green light curtains disappear. The scavengers hurriedly attacked the green light curtains. The light curtains trembled like water but did not disappear. Some of the scavengers turned around and charged at Lurden. The light curtains would only disappear if they defeated the Green Knight. The players immediately stopped them. Light flashed everywhere and explosions sounded non-stop. The scene was a mess. On the ship, Cecily was burning with anxiety. He kept looking at the time, wishing that he could just leave the others behind and escape with a spaceship. At this moment, Han Shao arrived. He scanned the situation and immediately understood the situation. He immediately came up with the most violent strategy. As long as he killed the leader of the Gazers, the enemy would be finished. Psychic? His level should be a bit lower than Serpent Braid. Typical high attack and low defense. Han Zhao's intelligence was quite high, so his mental resistance was not bad. Plus, he was very tanky and liked to deal with enemies with high attack and low defense. The cooldown of Flaming Will was over. Without saying anything, Han Shao took out his gun and fired a shot. Boom! A blazing beam of light shot out from the muzzle. The leader of the Gazers was alerted. He turned around in shock and hurriedly created a psychic shield. However, it shattered instantly. The beam of light swallowed half of his body, burning it black. The pale white psychic light in the leader's eyes disappeared. He screamed and fell to the ground. This shot had triggered the effect of the talent. When the first shot was fired, there was a 12% to 25% chance of causing true damage. In Han Zhao's vision, the health of the leader of the Gazers dropped from 4/5 to 1/5 in the blink of an eye. With such a high damage, the leader of the Gazers was immediately inflicted with weakened, heavily injured, and other negative statuses. Han Shao seized the opportunity and charged forward at full speed, knocking away the scavengers blocking his way. He rushed into the crowd and directly controlled the leader of the Gazers, who could not resist. This series of actions was completed in a flash. The scavenger leader that the players had been attacking for a long time was taken down. Although it was a sneak attack, the efficiency was shocking. Lurden's pupils shrank, and his eyes followed Han Zhao's figure closely. What a strong guy! Is he also a mercenary? The leader of the Gazers and Serpent Braid were similar in strength, but they had different inclinations. Han Zhao's explosive power was most suitable for dealing with enemies with high attack and low defense. In comparison, it was more difficult to deal with enemies like Serpent Braid, who was more of a tank type, and this time, he had triggered true damage. Without their leader, the scavengers were in chaos. Cecily's heart sank. He did not care about anything else and sat in the pilot's seat, about to start the spaceship and escape alone. Cecily closed the hatch immediately. Suddenly, he heard the sound of metal tearing. The half-closed hatch was torn open. Han Shao walked in, picked Cecily up, and threw him out. "We meet again." Han Shao opened his mask and smiled at Cecily. It was a very friendly smile, but in Cecily's eyes, it was no different from a wolf, a tiger, or a leopard. The dangerous aura pierced straight into his heart. "It's you. Don't kill me. I know a lot of things. I know a lot of information." Cecily's face was filled with fear. He could not speak coherently and only wanted to beg for mercy. Bang! An electromagnetic needle bullet pierced through Cecily's forehead and blew away half of his head. Blood and flesh splattered all over the floor. Han Shao put away his Gaussian sniper rifle and did not even look at Cecily's corpse. He turned to the people from Temple of God and said, "I'll leave this to you guys." The remaining scavengers were slaughtered one-sidedly. None of those who boarded the spaceship managed to escape. At this time, the vibration of the spaceship also stopped. Han Shao looked out the porthole. The scavenger spaceship that had been harassing them in space saw that their companions had all been wiped out and immediately fled. It was only now that the crisis had truly been resolved. It's finally over. Luckily, it was more dangerous than dangerous. Han Shao heaved a sigh of relief. Encountering an attacker in space, one moment of carelessness and the spaceship would be destroyed. This small episode made him a little nervous, but it also awakened the nervousness of galactic battles. After staying in Blue Star for too long, Han Zhao's familiarity with galactic battles was gradually returning. Han Zhao was used to summarizing after a battle. In this attack, he had taken advantage of the player's advantage, split up, and controlled the overall situation. The group of players who suddenly came online was also a pleasant surprise. Overall, he felt that he could give himself a score of 82. At this time, Han Zhao finally had the time to size up Lurden. Seeing the damaged mechanical prosthetic body, his eyes sparkled. Mechanical prosthetic body. It should be an advanced modification. It also has a transformation function. Out of his professional instinct, Han Zhao subconsciously analyzed the technology. Although Lurden was quite curious about Han Zhao, he was relatively cold. He stood to the side with an expressionless face and did not have any intention of greeting him. Chapter 323. The Godora guards finally arrived. They hovered beside Short Horn Star and sent out a communication request. The shield was gone and they could receive the signal. The mission notification was completed, and a new notification appeared. Go to the captain to receive your reward. Han Zhao came to the main control room, and all the players followed him. The captain was talking to the guards, explaining the situation. The captain knew that the scavengers were all taken care of, so he asked about the details. The scavenger attack was only a small security problem. Since the tour group was safe, they only needed to record what happened and record it in the duty log. Although he had met his compatriots, Kurlad was very obedient. He stood beside Han Zhao and played with his braids. The call ended and the guards left. The captain turned on the radio again and announced to the whole ship, "The crisis has been resolved. Sorry for the shock. Short Horn Star will go directly to Ubarely Hub for repair." Everywhere in the spaceship, the passengers who survived cheered and hugged each other. They were very touched. After turning off the radio, the captain finally had time to thank Han Zhao and the others. He said with gratitude, "Thank you very much for your help. I still don't know your name." Han Zhao. The captain repeated it a few times and confirmed that he had never heard of this name before. He was not a famous mercenary or warrior. "I will fulfill my promise. You will all get a reward." Lurden coughed. The captain hesitated and said, "Green Knight, your reward will not be small either." Although Lurden ran away halfway, he still fought. Lurden nodded. Han Zhao raised his eyebrows. The name Green Knight triggered some of his memories. Like a flash of lightning, he frowned and thought for a while. Then, he began to recall some information. Generally speaking, the details that he remembered were valuable. Green Knight. Sunil race? Han Zhao mumbled. This race seemed to have a storyline. The reward from the captain was a transfer. All the players who had accepted the mission had a share of it. After they registered their own accounts, the captain transferred all the money to them. Everyone received 1,500 anas, which was equivalent to half of Kurlad's annual salary. It was very generous. Hao Tian and the others were not online at the beginning, so they did not accept the quest. At this moment, they were extremely envious, and their resentment was about to condense into clouds. Although the Short Horn Star Travel Group was of a lower class, it was still a financial group. They had managed to secure the Short Horn Star, which was a priceless travel ship. The extra 8,000 anas given by the captain was a personal request that belonged exclusively to Han Zhao. Han Zhao's account balance had increased to 10,000 plus, which was more than 10 times his original amount. His heart was filled with joy. This was the first bucket of gold he had earned in the interstellar space, and the amount was not bad at all. He had more than enough starting capital. The players all received their money, and Han Zhao was also very happy. These players had received the universal currency, which meant that he would have more money to spend. He would find an opportunity to sell their items and pay with anas, and he would be able to earn another sum of money. If he was the only one who accepted the mission, he would only receive a fixed amount of money. The player's participation would indirectly increase his profit by dozens of times. The money in the player's pockets was equivalent to Han Zhao's little treasury. The regional reputation system was a new function that appeared after the players entered the interstellar space. The universe was huge, and the players were active in different regions, doing missions and deeds to accumulate their regional reputation. The regional reputation system was linked to the initial relationship between the organizations in the region. If one's reputation reached a certain level, they would receive legendary points. This was a specific way to obtain legendary points. The bigger the region, the harder it was to accumulate reputation. Han Xiao had left a good impression on the financial group behind him by protecting the short-horned star. This was a small deed that could be written into his resume. Regional reputation was a good thing. When dealing with organizations, accepting missions, and so on, there was a reputation requirement. The higher the reputation, the higher the level of contact, and the better the rewards. The reputation system was a key function. In Han Zhao's previous life, many players were willing to do anything to increase their reputation. In the past, Han Zhao's business also included quickly gaining popularity. As the saying went, destruction was easier than construction. Good things never left the house, but bad things spread far and wide. Usually, after he gained popularity, his employer's account would be wanted by more than half of the organizations in the area. No way. After settling the payment, Lurden turned around and left. Han Zhao's eyes flashed, and he stepped forward to stop Lurden. "What's the matter?" Lurden stopped. He had a deep impression of Han Xiao and was a little surprised that he stopped him. Han Zhao's eyes turned and he coughed. "I caught the leader of the boneless birds, called Serpent Braid. I'm going to exchange him for the bounty, but I just checked. I have to go to a galaxy far away and I don't want to go that far. How about I sell this hostage to you?" Lurden was stunned. He thought about it and said, "Okay, no problem. Serpent Braid's bounty is 3,500 anas. Transfer the money to me." Lurden frowned. "You don't want the full payment, do you?" "That's impossible. I have to go very far to get the bounty and there's a cost. I can't earn anything, so why would I exchange?" "How much do you want to pay?" 1,500. "Why don't you just rob a bank?" Han Xiao smelled a trace of the same industry. His eyes turned serious, and he slowly said, 3,000. 1,800. At least 2,900. 2,000. The two of them haggled for a long time. Lurden was very stubborn when it came to money, and he would not let go of even a small profit. He was obviously a cold person, but now, he was arguing so hard for a 2-digit amount of anas. After arguing for a long time, they finally settled on the price. Lurden paid 2,501 anas for Serpent Braid. This extra point could be considered Han Technician's victory. After negotiating a business deal, Han Xiao felt that he had gotten to know Lurden. His eyes flashed, and he said, "Do you know the reason for this attack?" Lurden shook his head and said, "You look like you know the inside story." Han Xiao smiled, stared at Lurden's expression and slowly said, "These scavengers were hired by Darkstar to capture that god Aura guy. How unlucky, don't you think?" When he heard the words Darkstar, Lurden's pupils constricted, and his eyes subconsciously changed. A deep hatred and anger flashed through his eyes, as if he had thought of something bad. "Oh, I know." Lurden finally took a deep breath, calmed down, and said goodbye with an expressionless face. Han Xiao smiled, pointed at Lurden's body and said, "I'm a mechanic. If you don't mind, I can do a simple repair for you." Lurden stopped in his tracks. "For free? Hee, our relationship is not at that level yet. I only need a service fee." I think 5 annas is not bad. Then never mind. Nice to meet you. Goodbye. Lurden turned around and left. Han Shao was speechless. TSK, not even giving me $5. So stingy. Kurlad came to the side, shook his head, and sighed. Sigh, Sunil, it's understandable for them to be so greedy. I know. Han Shao nodded and thought to himself. He had purposely talked to Lurden, not only to sell the bounty criminals, but also to get to know Lurden. Ever since he remembered who Lurden was, Han Shao had a new idea. Sunil, this race existed in the Garten star system, and there was a very good solo storyline. Originally, he would only be able to come into contact with it in the later versions, but after testing Lurden, he could confirm that this storyline existed at this point in time. He clearly remembered that there was a chance to obtain a very rare subclass in the Sunil storyline. He was currently stuck at the requirements for class advancement, and he needed a subclass. This was a very important part. Furthermore, this storyline had a protagonist-type character, and Han Shao was very interested in protagonist-type characters. This was related to another blueprint that he was about to implement. One of the goals of entering the galaxy was to seek growth. With these two reasons, plus the coincidental meeting today, Han Shao suddenly had the idea of participating in the Sunil storyline. It would be very beneficial for him, and it would be somewhat related to the main storyline. The Sunil race was a small civilization in the Garten star system. They used to live a prosperous life, and were an ally of the Godora civilization. However, one day, Darkstar invaded and destroyed the Sunil race's homeland. The surviving Sunil people migrated, and were protected by Godora. They were given a piece of land on a certain planet and barely survived. The fire of their civilization was still burning. Therefore, when Darkstar was mentioned, Lurden could not help but be angry. Chapter 324. After the scavenger attack, Short-Horned Star did not stop midway and headed straight for Uberly Hub. A few days later, a floating steel fortress appeared outside the porthole. Uberly Hub's futuristic design, coupled with countless stars in the distance as its background, gave it a creepy yet mysterious aura. Spaceships docked and departed from the space station, leaving colorful trails of light in space. From afar, there were thousands of colorful trails around the space station. Although it was silent in space, it gave off an inexplicable lively atmosphere, like fireworks blooming in the night sky. The beauty of civilization was nothing more than that. Opening the local channel on the communicator, countless local calls appeared. Every spaceship was applying, and the hub was officially dispatched. Different languages, voices, and mechanical sounds mixed together to form a unique symphony. The bustling atmosphere was completely different from the silent appearance. Short-Horned Star slowed down and slowly approached Uberly Hub. As they got closer, the space station gradually enlarged in the porthole and soon occupied all the space. It was then that they realized how huge this space fortress was. Short-Horned Star, which was the size of a small city, was like a soybean compared to a watermelon when compared to Uberly Hub. The players who were seeing it for the first time had looks of shock and amazement on their faces. The incomparable shock struck deep into their hearts. In front of this space station, everyone deeply felt the feeling of insignificance. So big. It's like a planet. So, this is the Sea of Stars. Excitement quietly rose in his heart, and soon after, his face was filled with infatuation. The Sea of Stars was the deep curiosity of every race that looked up at the stars, and the players were no exception. Pork Bun recorded everything and could not stop at all. He wished he could open a few more shots. Han Shao was used to this, so he was very calm. He stroked his chin and pondered. Entering Uberly Hub was the first step to officially embarking on a galactic journey. Uberly Hub was a transit station and also a huge communication center. Many organizations had offices there, and it was also the gathering and distribution center of the Colton star cluster. It could even be considered a transportation center. It had a lot of functions, and it even had long-term rentals for people to stay in. In Han Zhao's plan, Uberly Hub was an important place for the first phase of the operation. Many operations had to be extended from Uberly Hub. If his operation plan in the Colton star cluster was like a spider web, Uberly Hub would be the center of the web. Han Zhao felt that the most important goal now was to make a breakthrough in his strength and ensure his safety. Level 70 was not enough in the galaxy, and he had an astronomical amount of experience of 2.7 billion. Now that he had a foundation, he had to find a way to convert it into combat power. Therefore, he had to deal with the class change requirements, which were the two factors of subclass and class advancement knowledge. In Uberly Hub, he could buy class advancement knowledge on the exchange, and the anas he had saved up could be put to good use. Han Zhao now had 2 class advancement knowledges, and the class change requirement was 5. Although he did not know the current market price of class advancement knowledge, according to Han Zhao's memory, he did not have enough money to spend with his 13,000. Knowledge had always been expensive. However, compared to Blue Star, the process of obtaining class advancement knowledge was dozens of times simpler. As long as he had money, there was no need to spend so much effort to form relationship. Earning money was an important goal, so he had to start from scratch. This time, the broadcast sounded, and the captain's magnetic voice came out. "We are about to enter Spaceport 273. All passengers, please head to the bridge area to wait for landing. Thank you for choosing the Short-Horn Star Travel Group. Once again, we apologize for the accident of this trip. Thank you for riding with us." Short-Horn Star entered the large spaceport, and the bottom of the spaceship was embedded in the track. After stabilizing, the metal door of the spaceport opened, and the spaceship entered along the track. The spaceport closed, isolating the outside space. Entering a gravitational environment from a zero-gravity environment, Short-Horn Star suddenly sank. There was a stable gravitational cycle inside the spaceship, but the passengers did not feel anything. The passengers on the spaceship headed to the bridge area behind the cabin door to wait to disembark and collect their luggage. The players were carrying Han Zhao's supply boxes, which attracted a lot of attention. The surrounding passengers knew that Han Zhao had protected the spaceship, so they all looked at him with kind eyes. Well, that was only if they could distinguish the eye structure of different races. Only then would they know that a murderous look was a sign of kindness in some races. Anyway, the players felt uncomfortable all over, as if they would be pounced on at any time. "I'm free." Kurlad opened his arms excitedly as if he was hugging the sky. "Don't be so excited, Andy Dufresne. You've been treated well. I didn't mistreat you." Han Zhao glanced at him. "You even earned 1,500 anas because of me. I think you should thank me. If you return my equipment to me, I will indeed thank you." "Wow, it's so noisy here. What did you just say?" Kurlad shook his head helplessly. It would be impossible to make Han Zhao spit out what he had taken. He became serious. "I need to go back and report my work and write a progress report. I will keep my promise and not pursue you. Even if you doubt my integrity, according to the danger level of the investigator profession, your actions are not enough to make you a wanted criminal. So, you can rest assured that no one will trouble you." "Sounds good." Han Zhao put down his gun with a smile. "It's my bad luck to have met you," Kurlad said unhappily. Han Zhao smiled and was in a good mood. "I'm very happy." The spaceship shook and stopped. The hatch slowly opened and a white platform appeared outside. It was as big as a square and the lights were bright. The dome was hundreds of meters high and it was magnificent. Only a port of such size could fit Short-Horn Star. At the end of the platform was the entrance to the space station. Han Xiao led the players and followed the crowd down the spaceship. He saw Lurden from the corner of his eyes. This guy was in a hurry, not willing to waste even a second. He quickly walked to the entrance with the bounty criminals and was at the very front. After the attack, Han Xiao and Lurden did not talk a second time. Their relationship stopped at meeting, but it was not a big deal. If I interfere with the Sunil storyline, we should have a chance to meet again. After walking through the long and winding tunnel, they finally arrived at the interior of Uberly Hub. In front of them was a huge space. The official name was Hub Hall, but even though it was called a hall, it was as big as a city, dozens of square kilometers wide. At the end of the Hub Hall was a huge curved window that looked out at the space outside. Han Xiao and the others came in from the entrance near the window. The dome of the Hub Hall was extremely high. The top was almost 1,000 meters away from the ground. In the center was a white tower that connected the dome. With this tower as the center, the surrounding buildings that were hundreds of meters high rose from the ground and extended out in a circle. The shapes of the buildings were different. Every building took up a large area, and every floor was a platform with all kinds of facilities and venues. Bridges were connected between the buildings for pedestrians to pass through. Countless bridges in the air were high and low, and they were complicated like a maze. Many small public aircrafts were shuttling between the bridges. The ground was also filled with small and large facilities, such as stadiums, theaters, open-air venues, and so on. Different races talked to each other, and the aircrafts flew by in the sky. It was very lively. The players felt like they did not have enough eyes. This feeling was like flowers in the sky, cows and sheep could be seen in the wind, and apes were crying on both sides of the river. A group of white herons flew into the sky. In short, they were so excited that they could not speak properly. The Hub Hall has many functions, and it can be divided into more than a dozen areas. There are restaurants with all kinds of civilizations that serve all kinds of weird food, shops that sell clothes and equipment, and places for leisure and entertainment, such as theaters, bars, racing activities, sports, and gambling. There are also places for supers to train, gravity rooms, combat simulations, meditation rooms, machine modification workshops, offices that provide part-time jobs, such as authoritative organizations like the Universe Mercenary Alliance and the Magicians Society. There are also financial groups and organizations that hire people, online exchanges in the Star Cluster area, shipyards that repair and build spaceships, and so on. Han Zhao's memory flashed past. Basically, this place could satisfy all his needs temporarily. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.